Chapter 2282. Hearing her words, Li Jianyue was so angry that she laughed out loud. Are you crazy? He's my brother. Don't you think it's strange? Qin Shizao said. How can a brother control his sister's social space like this? You've explained it to him so many times, but he's still very unhappy every time he sees you with Jingyi. Just like when we met just now. Did Senior Li ignore you because he was angry? Has he been like this before? And as far as I know, you and Senior Li are not related by blood at all. Qin Shizao took a deep breath and pulled Li Jianyue, who was in a daze, to sit down on the sofa and said, Jianyue, I like you as much as Jingyi. I said so much because I treat you as a good friend. If you don't believe me, you can see later. Senior Li and Jingyi are definitely fighting in the bathroom. The reason why Qin Shizao dared to say so confidently was because she knew Quan Jingyi's character, which seemed sloppy but would never back down. She could tell that Quan Jingyi liked Li Jianyue. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been paying attention to the dejected Li Jianyue from the moment he came in. Li Mosen's face was very ugly from the beginning, and he even shook off Li Jianyue's hand, which meant that the anger in his heart had reached a critical point. This fight was inevitable, but to Li Jianyue, her words were even more unreal than Mars hitting Earth. Brother Mosen had always been a very gentle person since he was young. He had never changed. He was like this to everyone. He wouldn't fight with Quan Jingyi. Li Jianyue was a little angry and said, Shizao, since you said that we are friends, I hope you won't talk nonsense like this anymore. If you continue like this, I will be angry. After saying that, she stood up and took out her phone while saying, I'll go find Brother Mosen now and explain the misunderstanding to him. Li Jianyue made a call and walked towards the bathroom. Qin Shizao, who was sitting on the sofa, didn't stop her. She picked up the drink on the table and took a sip. She turned around and stared at Li Jianyue's figure with a sneer on her face. Often, the truest words were the easiest to be treated as lies. But when she found out that it wasn't a lie, it was the most interesting time. Qin Shizao sneered and muttered, Li Jianyue, Li Mosen will be mine sooner or later. Li Mosen's call went through, but no one picked up. Although Li Jianyue didn't believe Qin Shizao's nonsense, she was still a little worried that Brother Mosen and Quan Jingyi would really fight. With that thought in mind, she quickened her pace toward the bathroom. However, before she could reach the bathroom door, she saw the bar owner supporting Quan Jingyi out of the bathroom. Although Quan Jingyi was being supported, other than the scars at the corners of his mouth and eyes, he was not injured. Quan Jingyi acted as if nothing had happened. He walked over while talking and laughing with the boss. However, when she saw the injury on Quan Jingyi's face, she suddenly became nervous. Quan Jingyi, she called out. Quan Jingyi. And the bar owner looked up at the same time. Li Jianyue quickly ran up to him. Quan Jingyi wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, as if he was trying to hide it. He smiled and said, Why did you follow me? Did you fight with Brother Mosen? She asked worriedly. The smile on Quan Jingyi's lips froze slightly, but he didn't deny it. He said in a lazy and calm voice, How can we solve the problem between men without using our fists? When Li Mosen heard this, his pupils shrank and he blurted out, What about Brother Mosen? Download address, phone reading. Chapter 2283. Seeing the worried look on Li Jianyue's face, the smile on Quan Jingyi's face froze. The bar owner looked at Li Jianyue and asked, Jingyi, are you two fighting because of this girl? Hearing the boss's words, Li Jianyue understood without asking any more. She ran past Quan Jingyi anxiously and rushed into the bathroom without a care in the world. Brother Mosen. The sound of water kept ringing. In front of the sink, Li Mosen's tall body was slightly bent, and his face was full of water droplets. He looked down at the water in the sink in a daze. Hearing Li Jianyue's voice, he subconsciously looked back. Because she was too anxious, Li Jianyue's heart was beating very fast. She panted and looked at Li Mosen, who was unharmed, and breathed a sigh of relief. Brother Mosen wasn't hurt? Turning off the tap, Li Mosen stood up and asked, Why did you come in? Brother Mosen, are you okay? Li Jianyue ran forward quickly, grabbed his hand and asked, Are you hurt? Li Mosen unnaturally pulled out his hand that was grabbed by her, and put it behind his back. No. Although he had already treated her like this once when he came, No matter how fast he withdrew his hand this time, Li Jianyue still noticed his injury. Li Jianyue angrily grabbed his hand. When she saw the broken skin on the back of Li Mosen's hand, her eyes turned red with heartache. "Why did you fight?" Li Jianyue asked loudly with red eyes. If you ask Li Mosen what he was most afraid of in his life, it was probably Li Jianyue's tears. After seeing the tears in Li Jianyue's eyes, Li Mosen could no longer pretend to be indifferent. "I just gestured a few times. I didn't really fight." "Gestured a few times? Why is your hand bleeding?" Li Mosen reached out to wipe the tears from the corner of her eyes, and a gentle smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. "I accidentally hit the side door." Looking at Li Mosen's natural movements and gentle eyes when facing her, Li Jianyue's excitement suddenly stopped, and her mind involuntarily thought of what Qin Shizhao had just said. Some things, if not deliberately mentioned by others, could not be seen at all. But after being mentioned by Qin Shizhao, Li Jianyue's heart inexplicably panicked. She also vaguely felt that Brother Mosen was too intimate with her. Thinking of this, Li Jianyue became more and more panicked. No, Li Mosen was her biological brother. Brother Mosen was just very good to her, and simply loved her as a sister. She couldn't believe Qin Shizhao's nonsense. Li Jianyue's personality was too simple. She would often show her worries on her face. The struggle in her heart was also shown on her face. Li Mosen looked at her suddenly pale face, and thought that she was thinking about the fight between him and Quan Jingyi. He pinched her cheek and said, "It's really just a few moves. Don't cry." Because of Li Jianyue's nervousness and concern for him, the depression he felt when he first came had disappeared. As usual, Li Mosen put his arm around her shoulders, and was about to take her out of the men's bathroom. At this moment, Li Jianyue suddenly raised her hand and pushed his arm away. Li Mosen was slightly stunned and asked, "What's wrong?" Li Jianyue couldn't hide the panic on her face. She stuttered to find an excuse and said, "Brother Mosen, let's go home first. I don't want to play anymore. I need to go home first." Hearing her words, Li Mosen showed a gentle smile on his face and nodded. "Okay." Download address, mobile reading. Chapter 2284. When they left, they didn't say goodbye to Quan Jingyi and Qin Shizhao. But after returning home, Li Jianyue locked herself in the room, and didn't come down until dinner. Su Qianxi was worried about her daughter, so she asked Nanny Rong to make supper for Li Jianyue, and carried it upstairs. At this time, Li Mosen suddenly came over and said, "Mom, I'm going back to my room. Let me send it to Ursu." Hearing this, Su Qianxi thought for a moment, and said while handing him the supper, "Ask her if she's not feeling well. If she's not feeling well, tell me quickly." Li Mosen nodded and said, "Okay." Upstairs, Li Jianyue had been sleeping since she returned to her room. However, in fact, she had been in a daze and hadn't fallen asleep. She had never thought much about things, but this afternoon, she thought about a lot of things. As she thought more and more, many things that she didn't care about before became very obvious. Li Jianyue didn't want to believe what Qin Shizhao said, but every time she thought of Brother Mosen, she couldn't help but think about it. Just as she was curled up in bed, someone suddenly knocked on the bedroom door. "Ursu, Mom asked me to send you supper." Hearing Li Mosen's voice, Li Jianyue's eyes widened. It was the first time she had faced Li Mosen, and she looked very flustered. Li Jianyue quickly sat up and said, "Brother Mosen, I'm going to bed. I don't want to eat supper." Li Mosen said, "Open the door first if you don't want to eat." "I'm going to bed." "Brother Mosen, you should go to bed early too." After that, she immediately lay down and huddled in the thin quilt. She shouted at the door, "Brother Mosen, I really don't want to eat supper. Tell Mom that I'm fine." At the door, listening to her trembling voice, Li Mosen stood for a long time with the supper in his hand before turning around and leaving. The next day, Li Jianyue got up with panda eyes. Downstairs, Li Xiqing and Su Qianxi had already sat down for breakfast. Because it was the weekend, it was rare for the family to have breakfast together. Seeing her coming down, Li Moyen waved at Li Jianyue with 2 chicken legs in his hands. "Ursu, lazy girl, today's chicken legs are all mine." Looking at Li Moyen's excited look, Li Jianyue made a face at him listlessly and said, Little fatty, you will become a big fatty sooner or later. Just as she was about to retract her gaze, she suddenly caught a glimpse of Lee Mosin's gaze. The pair of deep blue eyes stared at her motionlessly, like the scorching sun, burning Lee Jianyue's skin. Lee Jianyue couldn't avoid it in time, and hurriedly lowered her head. She quickly finished her breakfast and went upstairs. For the whole day, other than eating time, Lee Jianyue almost shut herself in the room. Every time Lee Mosin wanted to talk to her, she would be like a mouse that had seen a cat. She would hide in a hurry. School reopened on Monday. Lee Mosin was waiting for her downstairs as usual, but when Nanny Rong came out of the kitchen, she told him in surprise, Jianyue has already gone to school. Lee Mosin frowned slightly. When did she go? Nanny Rong thought about it and said, almost half an hour. Hearing Nanny Rong's words, Lee Mosin's face instantly darkened. He pursed his lips and left the house with his school bag. Lee Jianyue didn't know how she spent Monday. Her mind was full of confusion. She sat in her seat in a daze. Even when the teacher asked her questions, she couldn't answer properly. Download address, mobile reading. Chapter 2285. Finally, school was over. As soon as the bell rang, Lee Jianyue couldn't wait to grab her bag and stand up. Just as she was about to leave, her wrist was suddenly grabbed. Lee Jianyue looked back at Quan Jingyi on her wrist and asked uneasily, "What's wrong?" Lee Jianyue was absent-minded for the whole day. Quan Jingyi also observed her for the whole day and saw her expression in his heart. The slender wrist and the palm didn't feel like a person's bones, but the skin was delicate and smooth. Quan Jingyi's eyes unconsciously glanced at her wrist, and suddenly thought of what he said to Lee Mosin in the bathroom. Sure enough, as she expected, the serious man of the school was really interested in Lee Jianyue, his sister. He just said a few words to provoke the mixed-race genius, and made his blood boil. He made a move on him, and did not deny his love for his sister. Quan Jingyi was not surprised, but he knew in his heart that it was impossible for them to be siblings. Lee Jianyue was such an innocent and straightforward girl. It was as hard for her to suddenly accept her brother's feelings for her. Seeing Lee Jianyue, who was depressed all day, Quan Jingyi wondered if Lee Mosin really couldn't help but confess to his sister. He looked at the uneasy girl in front of him, and swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. If Lee Mosin really confessed to her, keeping it a secret was the best way for Lee Jianyue to deal with it now. If he asked directly, it would make her even more panicked. Seeing that everyone in the class had left the classroom, Quan Jingyi only pulled her and didn't speak. Lee Jianyue became anxious. What if she met Brother Mosin at the school gate? It was obviously Qin Shizao's nonsense, but now she was thinking about it, and did something stupid to avoid Brother Mosin. How could she explain it when she saw Brother Mosin later? Thinking of the scene of meeting Lee Mosin, Lee Jianyue felt embarrassed. Quan Jingyi, do you have something to say? If not, I'll go first. She pulled her wrist and said. Quan Jingyi didn't let go of his hand. He stood up with his bag, and turned to hold her hand. Let's go together. When Lee Jianyue heard the words let's go together, she said without thinking. No. After saying that, she and Quan Jingyi were both stunned. The atmosphere was somewhat awkward. Lee Jianyue was stunned because when she heard that sentence, the first reaction in her mind was that Brother Mosin would be angry if he saw it. She couldn't make Brother Mosin angry. His heartbeat became frantic at this moment. She must be too tired to become like this. Lee Jianyue withdrew her hand awkwardly and said, I didn't mean anything by it. Quan Jingyi, I'm going home first. See you tomorrow. After saying that, she grabbed her bag and quickly ran to the door. From the school building to the school gate, Lee Jianyue used all her might to run 800 meters. She squeezed into the first group of people to run out of the school gate. When she got home, Lee Jianyue found an excuse to do her homework and locked herself in her room. There wasn't a lot of homework after class, but because he was thinking about other things, his homework was a mess. She laid her head on the table and sighed. She suddenly hated herself. She had clearly warned herself not to care about Qin Shizao's nonsense, but she still couldn't help but care. Sigh. Bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 2286. Knock knock. There was a knock on the door. Add to this sight Lee Jianyue raised her head, and looked at the tightly shut door. She felt a little uneasy. Who is it? Ursu, it's time to eat, Dasu said. Li Jianhua heaved a sigh of relief and said, Okay, wait for me. Hurry up. All right, you can go first. Li Jianhua stood up and looked in the mirror. After making sure that she looked normal, she walked out. During the meal, Li Mosen sat opposite her. Li Jianhua kept her head down throughout the meal. Li Jianxian sensed that something was wrong. He looked at Mosen and asked in a low voice, Did they quarrel? Li Mosen's azure blue eyes were slightly deep. He did not answer and lowered his head to eat. Su Qianxi also noticed that something was wrong with Li Jianhua. She picked up a piece of her favorite dish and asked softly, Ursu, what's wrong? Are you in a bad mood? Nothing. Li Jianhua glanced at her mother. But when she looked up, she noticed Li Mosen's strong gaze. When she came back to her senses, she was already looking at him. Just like that, she met his gaze. Deep and sharp. As soon as Li Jianhua touched it, she felt as if she had been electrocuted. She lowered her head. Li Xiqing saw his daughter's action, and subconsciously looked at Li Mosen. Li Mosen pursed his lips, and lowered his head to continue eating. Li Xiqing frowned quietly. Li Jianrui was a simple-minded person. All her emotions were written on her face. On the other hand, Li Mosen seemed to have been influenced by the others in the family. Perhaps it was because he had been imitating Li Xiqing. Compared to Li Jianhua, his emotions were hidden too deeply. However, even if Li Mosen couldn't see anything, there was no doubt that there was a conflict between the two of them based on their attitudes. Soon, Li Jianhua finished eating and left. She looked as if someone was chasing after her. Not long after Li Jianhua left, Li Mosen put down his bowl and stood up. I'm full too, he said. Li Jianxian was still eating. When Li Mosen stood up, he turned his head curiously and muttered, What's wrong with them today? Yu Chulin also found it strange. They must have quarreled. The young lady is probably throwing a tantrum. She'll be fine after some coaxing. Li Jianxian thought of his sister's temperament and nodded. That's true. Li Jianhua was a good-tempered person. She had perfectly inherited Su Qianxi's personality characteristics. Although she might occasionally be stupid, it was too easy to coax her back. No one cared. However, no one had expected that their carelessness would lead to consequences that they could not accept. When Li Jianhua returned to her room, her mood was very low. Right now, she really couldn't face Brother Mosen properly. As soon as she saw Li Mosen, she felt very strange. Qin Shizao's words kept ringing in her heart, reminding her that Li Mosen might not just treat her as a brother and sister. Li Jianhua was so annoyed that she threw herself onto the bed. Knock knock. Someone knocked on the door again. Li Jianhua raised her head and asked loudly, Who is it? No answer. However, there was another knock on the door. Who? Is it brother? Li Jianhua stood up and reached out to open the door. When she saw Li Mosen, Li Jianhua's heart skipped a beat, and she subconsciously wanted to close the door again. Li Mosen immediately stepped forward and blocked the door. Chapter 2287. Li Jianrui's heart seemed to be lifted up by him. She looked at him warily and said, Brother Mosen, what are you doing? The speed of her words was a little fast. The shock in her voice was very obvious. Li Mosen's heart seemed to be stabbed by something. He gritted his teeth and went forward to push the door open. Li Jianrui swallowed a mouthful of saliva and took a step back. She saw Li Mosen close the door and lock it. Then he walked towards her. He gritted his teeth slightly and said fiercely, Are you hiding from me? Li Jianrui rarely saw Li Mosen angry. Her heart beat faster and faster. She stepped back and said in fear, Brother Mosen, what's wrong with you? Don't be like this. I will be afraid. If you will be afraid, why are you hiding from me? Li Mosen's voice carried a hint of fierceness for the first time. Li Jianrui was stunned by the roar. Her heart was beating very fast. She said, Did that Quan Jingyi say something to you? Li Mosen sensed her panic, and subconsciously made his tone sound a little softer. He walked forward and approached Li Jianrui. He said softly, What did he say? Tell me. Li Jianrui's heart was even more flustered. When she reacted, she immediately changed her words and said, It's not him. He didn't say anything to me. It's Even now, you are still protecting him. Li Mosin seemed to be on the verge of a breakdown. He grabbed Li Jinrui's shoulders with both hands. What right does he have? What's so good about him? Li Jinrui, I am your brother. Now you know how to lie to me for the sake of a male classmate you have known for less than 3 months? His voice was a little loud, and his tone was a little fierce. Li Jinrui had never seen Brother Mosin like this. Before she could come back to her senses, tears had already rushed out. No, it wasn't him who said it. It was Shizao said it. Li Mosin saw her tears and finally regained his rationality. The rage in his heart was also comforted by her tears. He subconsciously let go. Li Mosin was a little annoyed. Sorry, I can't control myself. Don't cry. Sob, sob, sob. Li Jianhua finally couldn't help but cry. She looked at him and took a step back. Li Mosin looked at her repulsive look and felt a heartache. He approached her and reached out to wipe her tears. He said in a low voice, "Don't cry. Tell me, what did that Shizao say to you?" Seeing that Li Mosin seemed to have calmed down, she felt even more afraid in her heart. She choked and said, She said some very scary things. I don't want it to be true, but I don't dare to ask. So, I don't dare to see you. I'm afraid." Hearing her words, Li Mosin felt more and more disgusted with Qin Shizao. That woman didn't look old, but from her eyes, it could be seen that she was definitely not a simple person. Li Jianhua was a simple-minded person. She was easily affected by her words. It must have been very scary. Li Mosin suppressed his anger and whispered, "What is it? Tell me. Don't be afraid." "Boo-hoo. If I tell you, you'll be angry." "I promise I won't be angry. You were so fierce just now." Li Jianhua wiped her tears and said in an extremely aggrieved tone, "It was as if you wanted to hit me." Li Mosin sighed softly. "Even if I beat myself to death, I won't hit you, silly girl." Li Jianhua sniffled and stopped crying. She wanted to say something but stopped herself. Bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 2288. Li Jianhua sniffled and stopped crying. She wanted to say something but stopped. After making sure that his expression was normal, he whispered, "I actually think that Shizao's words are nonsense. She said that you are not my biological brother. Maybe you don't just have a normal brother-sister relationship with me." Li Mosin's expression changed slightly, and he looked at Li Mosin. Li Jianhua's words successfully made Li Mosin's heart skip a beat. The secret that had been buried in his heart for a long time seemed to have been ruthlessly torn open. It was exposed to the sun, and there was nowhere to hide. Seeing that Li Mosin was stunned, Li Jianhua didn't understand what he meant. She continued anxiously, "He said that you might like me. It's not the love between siblings, it's the love between boys and girls." I said, "How is it possible? We are siblings. How is it possible? It's a different kind of love. Shizao must have made a mistake, right?" Li Mosin's heartbeat suddenly accelerated. He looked down at the girl in front of him, and his mind went blank. Li Jinhua's eyes were still as pure and clean as before. However, in his eyes, there was already a deep and greedy look. Li Mosin couldn't calm down. The only thought he had at this moment was, she found out she knew. Had she finally found out the secret that was buried deep in his heart? Li Mosin looked at her, his Adam's apple moving up and down, his eyes burning. Li Jianhua subconsciously stepped back, her eyes wide. Even though Li Mosin didn't say anything, his eyes successfully made Li Jianhua feel uneasy. It couldn't be true, right? Li Jianhua's heart was in a mess. She said in a trembling voice, "Li Mosin, you can't." It was rare for Li Jianhua to call him by his full name. Li Mosin suddenly came to his senses. Only then did he realize that the girl in front of him had been scared to the point of retreating. Her eyes were filled with uneasiness. Li Mosin's heart beat faster. The excitement of being exposed and the heartache of being rejected intertwined. But at the same time, there was also the panic of not knowing what to do. What should he do? He shouldn't have let her know. But now that things had come to this, the impulse in his heart seemed to want to rush out, and he couldn't control it at all. He couldn't help himself. Just like how he couldn't control his anger, he couldn't control his desire to confess his love at this moment. However, the fear and rejection in Li Jinhua's eyes were like a sharp knife, deeply stabbing into his heart. causing all his impulses to be strangled in his throat. Lee Mosin suppressed the pain in his heart and forced a smile. How could that be? You're the only one who would believe that. Lee Jianyue's heart did not calm down with his words. Instead, she looked at him doubtfully. Lee Mosin sighed softly. My silly girl, how could you believe such words? What will you do without me in the future? She looked at Lee Mosin and asked cautiously. Is that right? I also think it's too weird. Hee. I said, she has been thinking too much. How is it possible? We are a family. You are the older brother, so you are the older brother. Lee Jianyue blinked her eyes, and the tension in her body relaxed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Lee Mosin's heart felt as if it had been soaked in sulfuric acid. There was a piercing sound, and the pain was unbearable. Who's your brother? I'm not. Bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 2289. However, when he saw the joy on Lee Jianyue's face, he swallowed the words in his mouth. Lee Jianyue sniffed. Although there were still tears on her face, her relaxed look was obviously a different person from before. Lee Mosin opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but nothing came out. He turned around and said in a light tone, Don't think too much. I thought something was wrong. It's just a small matter. Lee Jianyue was completely relieved. She was extremely annoyed. Yeah, this is impossible. I'm so stupid. Boo-hoo. Lee Mosin felt as if his heart had been scratched once again. He couldn't stay any longer and said reluctantly, Take a shower and go to bed early. I'm leaving. Oh. When Mosin came out, his movements were very fast. In a place where Lee Jianyue couldn't see, his eyes were slightly red and his hands were trembling slightly. Lee Mosin looked up and saw Lee Jianxian. Lee Jianxian looked at Lee Mosin and was silent for a moment. He said, What happened? Nothing. Lee Mosin said casually, and then prepared to leave. Lee Jianxian said, It doesn't seem like nothing happened. Let's talk. I said it's nothing. Lee Mosin's tone was slightly low, with a hint of displeasure and warning. Lee Jianxian was stunned. It seemed that Mosin's temper was much bigger than he had imagined. He had never seen him lose his temper since he was young. It turned out that it was just because he hadn't encountered it. Lee Jianxian shook his head. Dad is calling you. Lee Mosin paused. I don't know what's going on, but looking at Dad, it doesn't seem like he's looking for you to chat. Lee Mosin's eyes darkened as he looked at Lee Jianxian. Lee Jianxian spread his hands. Lee Mosin's lips pursed even tighter. He strode in the direction of the study. Li Xiqing was indeed there. Su Qianxi was writing in the study. She was twirling the brush, and the words under her hands were gentle and beautiful. And Li Xiqing was right next to her, grinding for her. At a glance, they looked like a couple in a painting. Su Qianxi had a slight smile on her face. Her face, which resembled Lee Jianyue's, had a gentle glow. When she saw Lee Mosin, she said, Mosin, you're here. Only then did Li Xiqing look at Lee Mosin. The gentleness on his face faded a little, and he turned to look at Lee Mosin with a slightly serious expression. Lee Mosin walked in. Dad, Mom. She put down the pen and took the initiative to step aside. She carefully pinched the two corners of the calligraphy and let it blow in the air. The ink quickly dried. Li Xiqing sat in the main seat and asked casually, Did you quarrel with Ursu? No. Lee Mosin was obviously in low spirits. How could there be no such thing? Li Xiqing didn't care and packed up the inkstone for her. Unexpectedly, he heard his father say, Dad, I've thought about it. Li Xiqing and Su Qianxi both looked over surprised. Lee Mosin seemed to be struggling, and there was obvious pain in his eyes. He opened his mouth as if he couldn't make up his mind, but in the end he closed his eyes, as if he had made a firm decision and said, I'm willing to go abroad. Li Xiqing looked at him deeply. Have you thought about it? Su Qianxi's gentle smile turned into worry, and she subconsciously looked at her husband. Li Xiqing's face was expressionless. He looked at Lee Mosin in front of him and didn't say anything. Lee Mosin's face was struggling, but he didn't have the courage to speak again. He didn't want to. Bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 2290. He didn't want to. He didn't want to. He didn't want to. But did he have a way out? Lee Mosin asked himself in his heart. Now he only noticed a hint, and Lee Jianyue was avoiding him. Then, if she noticed something in the future, Lee Mosin felt that he might not be able to bear any alienation from her in the future. Just today, he felt that he was about to go crazy. Perhaps he still needed a little more time and a little distance to calm himself down. Going abroad might not be the best choice, but it was the fastest way at present. He didn't even need to wait until he graduated from high school to study abroad. He could leave Li Jianyue and this family. Li Xiqing saw Lee Mosin's indecisive look and knew that he must have made up his mind to come here and say such things to him. He was not in a hurry. He lowered his head and continued to busy himself. Seeing this, Su Qianxi couldn't help but look at Lee Mosin and said, "Mosin, why do you suddenly want to go abroad? Have you thought about it? This is not a small matter. Going abroad is equivalent to leaving home and parents. Not everyone can get used to it." As a mother, Su Qianxi, like many parents, hoped that their children could stay by their side. Such a hope was understandable, but Su Qianxi also knew that no matter which child it was, there would be a day when they would go out, and there would be a day when they would come back. Looking at his mother's eyes, Lee Mosin was quiet for a moment, and then said, "Mom, I've thought about it. I want to go abroad to study at the school that Dad mentioned before." "Why?" Li Xiqing asked. Lee Mosin didn't expect Li Xiqing to ask such a question. After being stunned for a moment, he looked down and said, "Because I've thought it through." "What have you thought through?" Li Xiqing put down the things in his hands and asked, "Tell me." Lee Mosin actually didn't have many plans in mind. After being asked by Li Xiqing, he opened his mouth but didn't answer. Li Xiqing walked out from behind the desk and said slowly, "Mosin, you have always been calm, but today you are a little impulsive." Lee Mosin was speechless. He was indeed a little impulsive. From the first words he said when he came in, he began to regret it. Unexpectedly, Li Xiqing saw through it immediately. Li Xiqing raised his hand and patted the shoulder in front of him that was almost parallel to his own. He said meaningfully, "Go back and think about it. Come to me with your study plan tomorrow. I'll give you 1 day. If you don't come to me by this time tomorrow, I'll pretend that you never came today." Lee Mosin subconsciously straightened his back and looked at the painting hanging not far in front of him. He was slightly stunned. When she came back to her senses, he had already walked to her side. Taking the calligraphy from her hands, he whispered, "Where are you going to hang it?" Su Qianxi's attention quickly shifted from Lee Mosin to the calligraphy and painting. She was a little embarrassed when she heard what Li Xiqing said. "It's so ugly. Don't hang it up." "You're not ugly. Even Grandpa praised you for your willpower. You're very good looking. What does good concentration have to do with writing? Only people with strong willpower can write well," Li Xiqing said matter-of-factly. "I'll have it mounted tomorrow." She blushed. "Don't mislead the child. That's the truth," Li Xiqing said with a smile in his eyes. He put the calligraphy and painting on the side table. "Let's go back to the room." Bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 2291. As he watched Li Xiqing and Su Qianxi walk out of the study, Mosin suddenly felt exceptionally lonely. He stood there for a long time before he turned and walked out. Just as he turned and walked out, he saw Li Jianxian, who had been waiting at the door for a long time. Li Jianxian looked similar to Li Xiqing, but his temperament was worlds apart. Li Xiqing's quietness, calmness, and even malevolence were nowhere to be found in Li Jianxian. Li Jianxian had been brought up by his grandparents, so his personality was more like an ordinary young man compared to Lee Mosin. At that moment, Li Jianxian leaned against the wall and raised his chin at Lee Mosin. "Come to my room?" Lee Mosin was silent for a moment before he walked straight ahead. When he reached Li Jianxian's room, he found Yu Chulin there too. Yu Chulin was wearing a white t-shirt and black trousers. He wore a pair of glasses and looked very gentle and quiet, full of scholarly aura. At that moment he was reading a book. When Li Jianxian and Lee Mosin walked over, he put down the book in his hand and looked up at them. Lee Mosin had always been indifferent to Yu Chulin and tried to distance himself from him as much as possible. At this time it was no exception. When he saw Yu Chulin, Lee Mosin's eyes narrowed. He was not surprised that Yu Chulin would be in Li Jianxian's room. Li Jianxian sat on his bed and said casually, "Didn't you have something to say to him? You can say it now." Li Jianxian sounded especially carefree at that moment. Yu Chulin was sitting on a swivel chair. When the chair was turned around, Yu Chulin crossed his legs and looked even more elegant than before. The reason why Li Mosin did not like Yu Chulin was because of his temperament. Yu Chulin seemed to be born with elegance. No matter what he did, he was unhurried. Such a man must be very popular with girls. If he had not distanced himself from Li Jianyue in time, with Li Jianyue's innocent personality, no one could stop Yu Chulin if he had any intentions. However, if he avoided Yu Chulin, there was still Quan Jingyi. Perhaps there would be a second Yu Chulin and a third Quan Jingyi in the future. Li Mosin knew that he could not stop it. Thinking of this, Li Mosin could not help but laugh at himself and ask Yu Chulin, "What do you want to say?" Yu Chulin took off his glasses and played with them in his hand. "Are you going abroad?" Li Mosin did not say anything, which was a tacit agreement. Yu Chulin continued, "The path your father arranged for you is a good one, but it's not suitable for you. You know that, right?" Li Mosin frowned. "What are you trying to say?" "Nothing much. I just want to tell you that only a crying child will get candy. Instead of keeping all your worries in your heart, why don't you give it a try? It's better than being trapped in your own little world and being left with nothing but anxiety." Li Mosin's frown deepened. He didn't quite understand what he meant. Yu Chulin rarely spoke to him, so this was the first time he had spoken to him like this. "Don't think that I'm the only one who can tell that you have feelings for Ursu," Yu Chulin said as he looked at Li Jianxian. "Even Mo Yin asked us 2 days ago if you have any other feelings for Ursu." Li Mosin's heart skipped a beat. It turned out that the secret that he thought he had hidden so well was already known by everyone. Li Jianxian continued Yu Chulin's words and said, "What did Dad say when he looked for you?" Bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 2292. Haven't you already guessed it? Li Jianxian shrugged and didn't deny it. "I'm just guessing. Who knows what you're talking about?" "I said I'm going abroad," Li Mosin said calmly. "He asked me to think it over." Li Jianxian was surprised. "You asked for it yourself?" "Yeah." Li Jianxian was even more surprised. He looked at Li Mosin carefully and said, "I didn't expect that." Even Li Mosin didn't expect it himself, let alone Li Jianxian. After seeing Li Jianyue's reaction, Li Mosin already had an answer in his heart. And the emotions caused by this answer were so turbulent and intense. Li Jianxian continued, "What about Ursu? If you go abroad, Ursu will definitely not be used to it." Li Mosin had taken care of Li Ursu since she was a child. To Li Jianyue, Li Mosin was not only a brother, but also the only person who could think of her wholeheartedly at any time. The distance between them was closer than the relationship between their biological siblings, or the relationship between father and daughter. The reason why Li Jianyue was so innocent now was because Li Mosin had been inseparable from her since she was a child. Li Jianxian even suspected Li Mosin's intentions. Could it be that Li Mosin's purpose was to spoil her so much that she would never be able to leave him? This thought flashed through his mind, but it was also very scary. When Li Mosin heard Li Jianxian's words and Li Jianxian's expression at this time, Li Mosin seemed to have seen what he was thinking. He smiled and said, "If that's the case, that's great. If Li Jianyue couldn't leave him, that would be great." But in fact, Li Jianyue could live very well without him. But if he left Li Jianyue, Li Mosin couldn't imagine what he would be like. Li Jianxian still wanted to say something, but he heard Li Mosin say, "I'm going back. Goodbye." "Hey, wait for a while. You've only been here for less than 5 minutes." Li Mosin ignored him and turned to leave. The next day was Saturday. It was rare that Li Moyin didn't see Li Mosin and Li Jianyue playing together after coming to Yuxiu. It was too quiet. Li Mosin hid in the room and refused to come out. Li Jianyue also wanted to hide like a turtle. It was scary. When Li Moyin sensed the atmosphere, he tried to adjust it. However, he could be happy anywhere. But he couldn't bring the two of them out to play again. Li Moyin had no choice but to give up. At night, Li Mosin came to Li Xiqing's study as promised. Li Xiqing looked at his son, and guessed what he was thinking. He was a little surprised and asked again, "Have you really thought it through?" "Yes," Li Mosin answered very seriously. "I've thought about it. I'm going abroad to study, Li Xiqing nodded. Okay, I got it. Li Mosin looked straight at Li Xiqing and seemed hesitant. After a while he called out, Dad. I want to leave as soon as possible. Li Mosin's tone was very calm. Since I have to leave sooner or later, I hope the sooner the better. Why? Li Mosin pursed his lips. I heard that the United States is very cold. It's snowing. I want to go and have a look. Hearing this lame lie, Li Xiqing looked at him deeply. Really? Li Mosin didn't answer. Li Xiqing said meaningfully, Mosin, I'm very happy that you want to further your studies. But I hope that when you face anything, you choose to face it and not escape. I believe that my son will not be a coward. Chapter 2293. It was easier said than done. Li Xiqing didn't know anything at all. He didn't understand his embarrassment. Or maybe he knew, but he didn't want to expose it. I understand. Li Mosin lowered his eyes. Thank you, Dad. After leaving Li Xiqing's study, Li Mosin walked out of the living room and heard Li Jinyue's playful voice. Li Moyun. Li Moyun laughed and ran away with something from Li Jinyue in his hand. Li Jinyue chased after Li Moyun. Her long hair fluttered as she ran, and the smile on her face was dazzling. Li Moyun seemed to have sensed Li Mosin's gaze and looked in his direction. His chubby face was flushed as he panted and shouted, Brother Mosin, come and play with us. It's the most fun when there are three of us. Li Jinyue turned around as well. However, when her eyes met Li Mosin's, she averted her gaze. Even the smile on her face faded a lot. Li Mosin felt as if his heart had been hit hard. Li Moyun seemed to see a trace of embarrassment in his eyes. Li Mosin didn't pay any attention to anyone and turned to go upstairs. When Li Moyun saw this, he looked at Li Jianyue and asked, Did you two quarrel? Li Jianyue looked away and said, No. Li Moyun clicked his tongue and said, It's obvious that you did not. No. Li Jianyue returned to the sofa and sat down. She felt a little strange and said, Really? Li Moyun rolled his eyes at her. He was not stupid. However, with the relationship between Li Jianyue and Li Mosin, even if they had a conflict, it would only take half a day. Li Moyun didn't care. But he didn't expect that the conflict would continue when he returned home the next week. Li Mosin was a man of few words, but Li Jianyue also began to become quiet. It was obvious that something was wrong. When Li Moyun was thinking about how to make them reconcile, the doorbell rang. He looked at the time. It was past 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Not long after lunch, Nanny Rong was washing the dishes. Li Moyun ran to open the door barefooted. When he opened the door, he saw a beautiful lady. This girl was dressed very stylishly. She was dressed in the dark Lolita style from head to toe. Her makeup was also very exquisite, and she wore an exquisite princess hat on her head. Li Moyun found her a little familiar and asked, You are? Qin Shizao smiled brightly. Hello, I'm Jinyue's friend. I'm here to play with her. When Li Moyun heard her voice, he saw the figure of the teenager walking out from behind her. Quan Jingyi was tall and had long legs. He seemed a little embarrassed and turned his head away. When he met Li Moyun's gaze, he raised his head slightly and smiled at Li Moyun. Hello. When Li Moyun saw Quan Jingyi, he remembered and asked, Are you Li Jinyue's classmates? Qin Shizao immediately nodded and said, Quan Jingyi is Jinyue's classmate. I am Jinyue's friend. Oh. Li Moyun turned his head and shouted, Li Jinyue, your classmate is looking for you. Li Jianyue jumped up from the sofa and ran to the door. When Qin Shizao saw Li Jianyue, she was a little excited and said, Jianyue, hello. When Li Jianyue saw Qin Shizao, she had an indescribable feeling. There was surprise, but no joy. It was not a surprise. On the other hand, Qin Shizao looked a little happy. She walked in and said, I haven't seen you for a few days, but I really miss you. Your house is so beautiful. I can tell that the elders in your family are very classy. Chapter 2294. Of course my mother decorated our house. It's very beautiful. Li Moyun said proudly. Qin Shizao smiled and said, You are Jinyue's younger brother, right? They look alike. Li Moyun subconsciously touched his face and asked, Do I look like that? Qin Shizao nodded. Yes. You won't feel it when you look at each other. Only outsiders will know that you look very similar. That makes sense, Li Moyan agreed. Li Jianyue quickly interrupted their conversation and said, Shizao, how did you know my house is here? Of course I don't know. Qin Shizao smiled brightly. But someone else knows. Quan Jingyi is very familiar with you. As he spoke, he turned to look behind him. Li Jianyue also looked in his direction and found Quan Jingyi standing a little unnaturally near the door. When he met Li Jianyue's gaze, he only nodded slightly. By the way, Jianyue, where's your brother? Qin Shizao kept glancing inside. When Li Jianyue saw Qin Shizao's expression, it was as if she had specially come to find Li Mosin. This feeling made Li Jianyue feel a little uncomfortable. She instinctively stood in front of her and said, Since you're here, let's go out and play. Brother Mosin is very busy today. How is he busy? He seems to be in the room the whole time. Li Moyan said as he looked behind him. Hey, he's out. Li Moyan's words made Li Jianyue pause for a moment. But Qin Shizao's eyes lit up and looked in the direction that Li Moyan was looking at. Sure enough, he saw Li Mosin at a glance. Li Mosin was wearing comfortable home clothes and looked very casual. Her slightly curly black hair was slightly curled up, and her azure blue eyes seemed to be slightly tired. On her fair skin, there were 2 obvious eye circles. It seemed like he hadn't rested well. Qin Shizao looked at Li Mosin and said happily, Senior, we meet again. Li Mosin naturally recognized her. As soon as he saw Qin Shizao, he had a bad feeling in his heart. Sure enough, the next moment, she saw Quan Jingyi not far from the door. Quan Jingyi also looked over at the same time, a meaningful smile on his face. Senior. Li Mosin's eyes immediately darkened. Why are you guys here? Li Moyan immediately sensed that something was wrong with Li Mosin's emotions. During this period of time, Li Mosin had not been very happy, but he had never been as emotional as he was now. I'm here to play with Jianyue, of course. Qin Shizao smiled. It's really too boring at home on the weekend. It just so happens that I haven't seen Jianyue for a long time, so I came to talk to her. When Li Mosin heard Qin Shizao's voice, he felt impatient and looked at Li Jianyue. Li Jianyue didn't know what to feel at that moment. She lowered her head and said, Let's go out and play. Qin Shizao's gaze once again fell on Li Mosin. Senior, do you want to play with me? I'm not free, Li Mosin said coldly. Her attitude was too cold, and the smile on Qin Shizao's face was a little stiff. Li Jianyue quickly said, Let's go. Quan Jingyi gave Li Mosin a deep look before he turned around and followed the girls out. Of course, Li Moyan sensed that something was wrong. He quickly chased after Li Mosin and shouted, Brother Mosin, what are you doing? You seem to hate that girl. Chapter 2295. After the 3 of them walked out, Qin Shizao's face was already full of sadness. Jianyue, does Senior hate me? Li Jianyue also felt that Li Mosin didn't like Qin Shizao. Maybe it was because she told him a few days ago that it was Qin Shizao who told her those things behind her back. Thinking of this, Li Jianyue felt a little guilty and comforted. No, he's actually like this to everyone. Really? Qin Shizao looked like she was about to cry. This is the first time I've been hated by someone. The people who knew me in the past all liked me very much, only Senior. Li Jianyue's mood was a little complicated. Qin Shizao was indeed easy to like. She was beautiful, good at talking, good at dressing, and had a good figure. Li Jianyue was a little envious of such a girl. She had a cheerful personality and didn't have to worry about not having friends to play with. Qin Shizao quickly cheered up and smiled. But it doesn't matter, Jianyue. I really haven't played with you for a long time. I asked Quan Jingyi when you would come out to play, but he didn't know when, so I had to drag him to play with you. You don't mind, do you? Li Jianyue actually didn't mind, but when she saw the way Qin Shizao looked at Li Mosin, she felt a little uncomfortable. But facing Qin Shizao's calm gaze, Li Jianyue could only smile. Quan Jingyi glanced at her and asked casually, Do you want to go somewhere to play? Qin Shizao chuckled. Didn't you already think about it? What are you still thinking about now? As soon as she said this, Quan Jingyi seemed a little embarrassed. He turned his head away and looked into the distance, saying, I'm afraid that she won't go. How could that be? Qin Shizao grabbed Li Jianyue's arm Jianyue should like playing games the most, right? What game? Li Jianyue asked. Amusement park. Qin Shizao pulled Li Jianyue's arm and smiled happily. When they arrived at the amusement park, Li Jianyue realized that she had never been here before. This place was smaller than the amusement park she often went to. However, judging from the decoration of the facade, it was more exquisite than the places she often went to. Qin Shizao had always liked to wear Lolita-style clothes. Li Jianyue had seen her a few times, and she had been wearing dark Lolita clothes several times, which looked very stylish. After Qin Shizao brought them in, Li Jianyue realized that most of the styles here were similar to what Qin Shizao was wearing. There was a dark feeling, as if he had gone to hell. Very cool. However, Li Jianyue felt a little depressed. She still preferred places that were more pink, just like the amusement park that Brother Mosen often took her to. There were princess dresses and dolls everywhere. It was very cute. Qin Shizao took her to play several projects, and Quan Jingyi followed behind them silently. After a few projects, Qin Shizao and Li Jianyue were a little tired. Qin Shizao bought an ice cream for Li Jianyue. The two girls each took a bite, and soon walked to the bottom of the Ferris wheel. Qin Shizao giggled and said, "Let's go take the Ferris wheel." Sure. Li Jianyue agreed without hesitation. Quan Jingyi didn't talk much to begin with. Now he just followed silently. After waiting in line for a long time, Li Jianyue had already stepped onto the Ferris wheel. Suddenly, Quan Jingyi felt that he was pushed by someone. Qin Shizao blinked at him crazily. Then Qin Shizao screamed, "It's over. My stomach hurts. You guys play first. I'm going to the toilet." Chapter 2296. Qin Shizao turned around and ran away. The Ferris wheel was still moving, and the staff behind urged, "Are you going up or not?" Li Jianyue had already gone up, and she turned to look at Quan Jingyi. Quan Jingyi didn't seem to care, and stepped onto the Ferris wheel. The door was closed, and only Quan Jingyi and Li Jianyue were in the small enclosed space. The surroundings were very quiet. It was so quiet that only the sound of each other's breathing and heartbeat could be heard. Li Jianyue felt a little unnatural. The little shyness that had been hidden in her heart for a long time seemed to have disappeared at this moment. Quan Jingyi sat down next to her and looked outside. Li Jianyue was a little stiff. She looked at the empty seat opposite her and said, "It'll be more balanced if you sit there." "It's all the same," Quan Jingyi said. "It won't fall." Li Jianyue. It wouldn't fall, but it was uncomfortable. She turned her head away uncomfortably. Suddenly, Quan Jingyi said, "You seem to be very unhappy recently. Why?" "Ah." Li Jianyue was shocked. "No, I'm not unhappy." "You are," Quan Jingyi said firmly. "It's obvious that you're unhappy. Is it because of what happened last time?" "What?" Li Jianyue didn't understand what he was talking about. Facing Li Jianyue's gaze, Quan Jingyi suddenly said, "I'm sorry." "What?" Li Jianyue was even more confused. Quan Jingyi said, "I shouldn't have fought with Senior Li. I was the one who provoked him last time." Li Jianyue stared at him. "I knew my brother wouldn't fight with you. What exactly did you provoke him?" Quan Jingyi's gaze was deep as he said, "Do you want to know?" Li Jianyue, "Yes. I asked him if he liked you. It's not the kind of affection a brother has for his sister, but the kind of affection a boy has for a girl." Quan Jingyi's voice carried a hint of contempt. He didn't dare to say anything, so I said that I like you very much. Li Jianyue's heart skipped a beat. Quan Jingyi turned his head and looked very serious. "I really like you very much. You've always been a model in my album. I haven't remembered many girls since I was young. Shizao is my cousin. She's a month older than me, so she can be considered my cousin. Other than her, I haven't talked so much to girls." Quan Jingyi turned his head and looked very serious. Li Jianyue's heartbeat was a little fast, but it didn't seem to be a rush of excitement. Instead, it was a little embarrassing. For a moment, Li Jianyue was a little stiff and didn't know what to say. "That's why I want you to be my girlfriend. I told him that you like me too. He's your brother and it's impossible." Quan Jingyi's gaze was serious. "Even if he isn't your biological son, you would still mind. You only see him as an older brother. If you knew his true feelings, you would definitely avoid him." Li Jianhua was speechless. Quan Jingyi saw the change in her expression and immediately asked, "Am I right?" Li Jianhua pursed her lips and shrank to the side. So he was angry. I think I must have poked his sore spot and accidentally stepped on his lightning spot. That's why he couldn't help but hit me. But I was the one who got hurt. I didn't fight back, Quan Jingyi said. If it weren't for the fact that the boss happened to be in the toilet, he probably wouldn't have stopped. He's a little extreme. Jianhua, do you know that? Enough. Li Jianhua's face turned cold. Don't say any more. Chapter 2297. I know better than you what kind of person Brother Mosen is, Li Jianhua said with a straight face. Don't say bad things about Brother Mosen in front of me anymore. I hate it when you're like this. Quan Jingyi, we can be friends, but don't like me. I won't like anyone. Quan Jingyi looked at her without any emotion on his face. Really? What about me? I don't like you, Li Jianhua said without thinking. Quan Jingyi stood up and approached her. Then why do you still want to be friends with me if you don't like me? Li Jianhua paused. I like you, but not that kind. Liking is liking, Quan Jingyi interrupted her. It's enough that you like me. Li Jianhua was a little embarrassed. No. Quan Jingyi looked at her flustered and exasperated look. The bit of forgiveness hidden in his heart disappeared without a trace at this moment. Li Jianhua was afraid that he would misunderstand and said loudly, I just want to treat you as a friend. Quan Jingyi, we are still young. I don't think so much. It doesn't matter if you don't think about it. It's fine as long as I do. You. Li Jianhua was speechless. Quan Jingyi said seriously, I really like you, Li Jianhua. Li Jianhua felt extremely embarrassed. She hadn't known Quan Jingyi for a long time, but almost a semester had passed. Although Li Jianhua had a good impression of him, she had always wanted to be good friends with him. Now Li Jianhua didn't dare to get too close to him. She forced a smile and shrank back. Quan Jingyi, it's okay. You don't have to feel pressured. Quan Jingyi's voice suddenly lowered. But I'm very curious. Your brother also likes you. You know that, right? Li Jianhua's heart skipped a beat. The Ferris will soon reach the end, and the door was opened. Li Jianhua pushed Quan Jingyi and said, We're here. Then she jumped down and ran away. Quan Jingyi pursed his lips and followed her out. Qin Shizao was waiting below. When she saw Li Jianhua running out, she smiled ambiguously. She wasn't in a hurry to find Li Jianhua. Instead, she walked up to Quan Jingyi and asked, How is it? Quan Jingyi looked at her coldly. Didn't you say that she likes me? Qin Shizao was stunned. Isn't that so? Every time she sees you, she will look at you seriously, and her eyes are very focused. Quan Jingyi's expression darkened. It's the same when she looks at you. Qin Shizao was left on the spot, while Quan Jingyi took a step forward and disappeared without a trace. After Li Jianhua walked out of the amusement park, she remembered that she hadn't informed them. After thinking for a while, she picked up her phone and prepared to inform them in the small group chat. However, after opening it, he realized that the small group seemed to have disappeared. His phone rang. Qin Shizao. Jianhua, why did you leave without saying anything? Quan Jingyi looked so sad. Li Jianhua suddenly felt a little guilty. Wasn't it rather hurtful for her to run away like that? What's more, Quan Jingyi was such a proud boy. Li Jianhua replied. Sorry, I'm not feeling well. I'll leave first. Qin Shizao. Tia, right, I have a date with a friend tomorrow night. Do you want to come along? Li Jianhua. No, you guys play. Qin Shizao. Sob, you abandoned me. Chapter 2298. Li Jianhua was in a terrible mood. Why did Quan Jingyi and Brother Mosen change in such a short period of time? How depressing. It was still very early. When Li Jianhua returned home, Li Mosen was forcing Li Mayan to revise his lessons. Li Jianhua heard Li Mayan's screams the moment she entered the room. When Li Mosen saw her come in, he was about to speak when he saw the unhappy look on Li Jianhua's face. Li Jianhua didn't even say a word to any of them. She turned around and returned to her room. Li Jianhua's dejected look soon attracted Li Mayan's attention. However, no matter how Li Mayan asked, Li Jianhua refused to say a word. Li Mayan had no choice but to give up. Li Mosen saw this and did not say a word. After dinner, Li Jianyue returned to her room and suddenly received a call from Qin Shizao. Qin Shizao's voice sounded very anxious. She said, "What should we do, Jianyue? Quan Jingyi is drunk and keeps calling your name. I can't even hold him back. Only you can hold him back. Come quickly." Qin Shizao's words were too anxious. When Li Jianyue heard this, she couldn't help but become anxious as well. How could this be? Qin Shizao was about to cry when she heard this. "Come quickly. This is the first time I've seen him like this. What did you say to him?" Li Jianyue was also confused. Did she say something? No. Seeing that Li Jianyue didn't say anything else, Qin Shizao urged, "Come quickly, come alone. Hurry up." Li Jianyue actually didn't want to go, but looking at the time, it was only 6:30, not too late. The entrance to the house was set at 9 o'clock. Even if he went out for a walk now, his family wouldn't suspect anything. Li Jianyue quickly carried her bag and walked out the door. Just as he was walking out of the door, he accidentally bumped into Li Mosen. Li Mosen seemed to have just taken a shower. His hair was still dripping water. When he saw that Li Jianyue had even carried her bag, he immediately asked, "Where are we going?" Something came up. Li Jianyue left quickly without looking back. Li Mosen frowned. "What else is there at this time?" Li Jianyue replied, "My friend is looking for me. He'll be back soon." My friend is looking for me. At this time, could it be that they were going on a date? Li Mosen's expression darkened at the thought of this. Which friend? Usually, Li Jianyue would answer Li Mosen honestly. However, ever since she knew that Li Mosen might have other thoughts about her, Li Jianyue felt that his concern was not so simple. When she heard Li Mosen's question, Li Jianyue felt a little disgusted and said, "I'll be back soon. We're good friends." Then, without looking back, he took small steps and left. Little did she know that her rare impatient tone made Li Mosen's heart ache a little. Li Mosen looked at her back. In the end, he pursed his lips and returned to his room. Li Jianyue took a taxi according to the address given by Qin Shizao. But unexpectedly, the address was a little far. After getting out of the car, he found that this was a relatively high-end entertainment venue. There was a casino, a restaurant, a hotel, and a set of entertainment facilities in the surroundings. There were bars, karaoke, and everything else. It was Li Jianyue's first time coming to such a place. Looking at the scantily dressed women and the obviously older men, she felt a little scared. Chapter 2299. But since she was already here, Li Jianyue could only bite the bullet and call Qin Shizao. However, Qin Shizao's phone couldn't get through. He made several calls in a row, but no one picked up. Just when Li Jianyue was confused, a waiter approached. Li Jianyue's first reaction was that he was here to receive her. She smiled awkwardly and stepped aside. The waitress didn't walk away. Instead, she continued to approach and said, "Hello, are you Li Jianyue, Ms. Li?" Lady Li Jianyue was a little unhappy. She didn't look like a lady at all. In an instant, she had aged so much. "Yes, you know me?" The attendant smiled. "Yes, Mr. Quan asked me to bring you there." "Mr. Quan Jingyi, of course." Li Jianyue was a little angry. It was not Qin Shizao who called her here, but Quan Jingyi. All of a sudden, Li Jianyue felt like she was being played. She wanted to see how Quan Jingyi would explain it to her later. Li Jianyue followed the waiter angrily and went up to the 33rd floor. This was a hotel. Li Jianyue felt that something was amiss. "Quan Jingyi opened a hotel?" The waiter nodded. "Yes, Mr. Quan has been waiting for you here for a long time." Li Jianyue didn't dare to go in. Although she had not experienced so many complicated things, she knew that a place like a hotel was not a good place. Especially when it was a man and a woman alone. And it was a drunk guy who liked her. Li Jianyue rationally felt that she shouldn't go in. She stopped in her tracks and said, "I'll call and ask him." Who knew that the waiter's expression would suddenly change and become fierce. "What are you asking? Get in here." The change was so sudden that Li Jianyue was shocked. Before she could react, the waiter had already pulled her back. Li Jianyue screamed, "What are you doing?" "Oh." His mouth was covered. The waiter's strength was astonishing. Li Jianyue didn't even have the ability to resist. She was already dragged into the hotel room. Lee Mosin dried his hair. The more he thought about it, the more upset he felt. Recently, Lee Jianyue had been avoiding him more and more. She was also less and less obedient to him. This feeling made Lee Mosin feel very uncomfortable. But he couldn't control himself from wanting to get close to her. He wanted to love and protect her like before. Lee Mosin checked the time on his phone. Half an hour had passed. The door to the house was set at 9 o'clock. She went out so late just now, so she couldn't have gone far. Lee Mosin wanted to call her, but he was afraid that she would dislike it. After thinking about it, he turned on the location. Their cell phone accounts were interlinked. As long as they wanted, they could know each other's location at any time. Lee Mosin quickly found her account, and found that her account was speeding, as if she was in a car. But the car was getting further and further away. Lee Mosin felt that something was wrong. Looking at the route, they had already reached the other end of Kingstown. The distance was very far. Lee Mosin waited for a while, and found that the GPS had no intention of stopping. Why did he run so far away at such a late hour? Lee Mosin sent her a message. Lee Jianyue quickly replied, I don't know either. I thought it was very close, but when I took a taxi, I realized that it was very far. Lee Mosin frowned and quickly typed, Give me the destination. Let me see where it is. Lee Jianyue seemed to hesitate for a moment, but she still sent a screenshot. Chapter 2300. The screenshot was a chat record. The person who sent this message to Lee Jianyue was Qin Shizao. Seeing the name Qin Shizao, Lee Mosin was already on guard. Lee Mosin couldn't bring himself to like this woman. More than that, he subconsciously felt that this woman was up to no good. Seeing the address, Lee Mosin recognized it at a glance. It was Star City. It had been established for decades, and was undoubtedly the #1 entertainment venue in Kingstown. But it was too messy inside. Qin Shizao actually asked Lee Jianyue to go to such a messy place? Lee Mosin's expression became more and more ugly. He typed, What are you going to do? Then, he sent another message. This kind of place is not for you to go. Lee Ursu. QAQ, I'm almost there. Lee Mosin stood up with a sullen face, put on his clothes and walked out. The driver, Uncle Yang, hadn't left yet. Seeing Lee Mosin's movement, he asked, Mosin, where are you going so late? Ursu is running around. Grandpa Yang, please send me to find her. Uncle Yang had no reason to disagree. After asking for the address, he took the child to Star City. For some reason, Lee Mosin's eyelids kept twitching. The ominous premonition was getting stronger and stronger. He couldn't help but urge, hurry up. Seeing his anxious look, Uncle Yang didn't dare to delay, and immediately stepped on the accelerator. With his experienced driving skills, he quickly left many people behind. Lee Mosin sent a message to Lee Jianyue, and she quickly replied, It's okay, I'll be back soon. Seeing such a message, Lee Mosin felt a little relieved and said, Be careful. That place is very messy. However, Lee Jianyue didn't reply again. The road from home to Star City was really very far. Suddenly, he received a message from Lee Jianyue. Someone is coming to pick me up. Someone? Who is this someone? Lee Mosin subconsciously thought of Quan Jingyi and Qin Shizao. Lee Mosin couldn't have a good impression of these two people at all. But at least if they were watching, Lee Jianyue wouldn't be bullied. Thinking of this, Lee Mosin relaxed a little, but he still urged, Grandpa Yang, try to hurry. Okay. Uncle Yang drove the car steadily. From the rearview mirror, he could see Lee Mosin's expression. He couldn't hide his nervousness. Uncle Yang said, Don't worry. Although Ursu is a little silly, she still knows what to do. Lee Mosin smiled bitterly. If she knew what she was doing, she wouldn't have run so far away without a sound. Uncle Yang chuckled. She's just a little girl. She'll be more sensible when she grows up. When he grew up a bit more, he would be more sensible. Lee Mosin felt bitter in his heart. If possible, he wished that she could be a little more innocent. Suddenly, the phone in his hand vibrated. It was Lee Jianyue. The call was quickly answered. Hello? Lee Mosin asked. However, Lee Jianyue's scream came from the other side. What are you doing? Oh. The sound was too sharp. Then, Li Mosin heard the muffled sound of the phone falling onto the carpet. Li Mosin's heart skipped a beat. He roared, "Ursu?" However, there was no response. "Quick! Faster!" Uncle Yang was also shocked by Li Mosin's attitude. He quickly said, "We're almost there." Li Mosin didn't dare to hang up the phone. On the other side of the phone, there was a rustling sound. It sounded like the wind, but also like the sound of a machine. Chapter 2301. Suddenly someone said, "Hey, there's a phone here. It's still talking." It was a woman's voice. Li Mosin immediately said, "Hello. Hello." The person's voice was quickly heard. "Are you the owner of this phone?" Li Mosin quickly said, "This is my sister's phone. She suddenly screamed just now. I was very worried. May I ask where you found this phone?" "In the hotel corridor." "Where are you now? You can come and get the phone." "I'm here." Mosin hurriedly got out of the car and almost ran in. The security guard saw Li Mosin like this and quickly came forward and asked, "What are you doing?" Li Mosin said, "I'm looking for someone." Then he had already rushed in. The person on the phone said, "On the 33rd floor, at the door of 3325. Li Mosin immediately rushed into the elevator. After getting in the elevator, Li Mosin suddenly felt that it was not very rational for him to come in like this. If something really happened to Li Jianyue inside, it was not something that a child like him could solve. Li Mosin's heart was beating fast. He called Uncle Yang. Uncle Yang was a retired soldier. He had been driving at home for many years. When he had nothing to do, he would also spar with his father and uncle. Although he was a little old, his skills were definitely better than his. Although Li Mosin still did not know what happened up there, it was better to be prepared. Now he could only hope that nothing happened to Li Jianyue. The elevator gradually rose, but Li Mosin's heart was beating faster and faster. After Li Jianyue was dragged into the hotel room, she cried loudly. Especially after seeing the 4 men in the room, she was even more frightened. She was thrown to the ground by the man in the waiter's clothes behind her. With a scream, Li Jianyue immediately shrank back. The men in the room were a little dark and short. One of them had a long scar on his face and looked very fierce. When he saw Li Jianyue, the young girl with delicate skin, the expression of the scarred man became covetous. "Not bad, you brat. You actually got such a tender one." That wretched expression scared Li Jianyue to tears. The scarred man was stunned and then laughed. "You're so timid. Are you an adult? Let me see." As he spoke, he walked towards Li Jianyue and took off his clothes as he walked. Li Jianyue was so scared that her face turned pale. She cried even louder and shouted, "Help! Help! Who the hell are you?" Scarface looked even more excited. "It doesn't matter who we are. All you need to know is that you've offended someone you shouldn't have." As he spoke, he pounced towards Li Jianyue. Li Jianyue screamed and got up from the ground. She turned around and wanted to open the door. However, it was easier said than done. She was pulled back by the waiter, who had just brought her here, and thrown to the ground again. Li Jianyue was a spoiled young lady. After falling twice in a row, her skin was burning with pain. However, the fear at this moment made her unable to care about the injuries on her body. She desperately shrunk into a corner. Why does this little girl look so small? She's about the same age as my daughter. I can't bear to hit her." A burly man who had been sitting on the bed spoke. His voice was like sand rubbing against a wooden board, extremely unpleasant to the ears. Chapter 2302. But Li Jianyue seemed to have grasped a life-saving straw. "Uncle, save me. I'm only 17 years old. And my father is Li Xiqing. Does Li Xiqing know? If you don't know my father, you know the LS group. That's our family's group. I'm Li Jianyue. Don't bully me. I'll ask my father to give you money." Hearing this, several men at the scene were shocked. Li Xiqing's daughter? Are you talking about the Li Xiqing who destroyed the Tang group and the Bo musical instruments a few years ago? Li Jianyue was stunned. She really didn't know these things. The Scarface man's face immediately darkened. "Damn, Li Xiqing's daughter, I have to do it. This son of a bitch, he ruined my rice bowl that year. If he hadn't made that bitch Tang Qing crazy, I would still be rich. With that, he pounced on Li Jianhua fiercely. That fierce posture scared Li Jianhua and she screamed. Ah! The girl's voice was very sharp. The scar-faced man went forward and covered Li Jianhua's mouth, then pressed her down on his knees, and reached out to tear her clothes. Li Jianhua's crying was broken, and she screamed in despair. No! Help! Ah! The scar-faced man didn't have any intention of stopping. Compared to his physique, Li Jianhua looked particularly petite. Not to mention, Li Jianhua herself was a child. Li Jianhua felt a chill on her body, and her coat had been directly taken off. She screamed and covered her body, screaming, "You can't touch me! My father won't let you go. My grandfather is a national general, and my uncle is a company commander. Ah! No, I beg you. No. Damn it." The scar-faced man saw Li Jianhua's white skin, which stimulated him to curse. Then he smiled obscenely and lowered his head to kiss her. Li Jianhua screamed and bit his neck. Tears and snot flowed on his neck. Li Jianhua used a lot of strength, and the scar-faced man's scream almost penetrated the ceiling. He tried hard to pull her down, but he didn't expect that Li Jianhua's teeth had sunk deep into his flesh. Everyone could see bright red blood flowing out of her mouth. Scarface stood up in pain and yanked her forcefully, throwing her away. Li Jianhua smashed into the cabinet door. Her snow-white skin hit the protruding handle. Her scream was accompanied by the muffled sound of her delicate body falling to the ground. Scarface grimaced in pain. The blood from his neck had already flowed all over his shoulder. When Scarface saw this, he became even angrier. He went forward and grabbed Li Jianhua's hair. Just like that, he lifted her up and threw her onto the bed. Li Jianhua covered her scalp and couldn't cry anymore. Scarface pressed her down to pull her pants and scolded. "Fuck, if I don't CK you to death today, I'll be your grandson." Someone at the side was also burning with anxiety. He hurriedly took off his clothes and said, "Be gentle, don't kill her directly. If we can't enjoy it, you're dead." Scarface gave a sinister smile. "Don't worry, I'll definitely leave you alive." Li Jianhua screamed and struggled, but her hands were already caught by another person. Ah! The sharp and hoarse voice seemed to ignite the beastly nature of these people. Chapter 2303. Several people rushed up, and Li Jinrui's hands and feet were fixed. The unbearable humiliation made her tremble all over. Since she was a child, Li Jinrui had never thought that she would have such a day. It was better to just die. Bang. There was a loud noise. Everyone was taken aback by his sudden appearance. Everyone's movements came to a halt. The last nerve in Li Jinrui's heart was completely broken by this loud noise. She only felt a chill in her heart and closed her eyes. She was no longer aware of anything around her. The scarred man was covered in blood, and the others were also in a state of naked. At this time, the door was knocked loudly, and everyone looked at each other in shock. "What's going on? Who is it?" someone asked. The person outside said, "Waiter." The scarred man finally got angry and shouted, "Get out!" However, the waiter did not leave, and then someone said, "Ward round, there is a little girl lost." Looking at the surveillance, she entered this room, and now her family is looking for her. His words made the people inside feel their hearts skip a beat. "What should we do?" someone asked. The scarred man spat and roared, "What should we do? I was bitten so hard. No matter what, we have to get back the original." As he spoke, he had taken off the last piece of cloth on his body, smeared his palm with saliva and touched it, and leaned toward the little girl on the bed. However, the next moment, the door opened with a beep. Several people outside immediately rushed in. The faces of the people inside changed. The scarred man trembled, and his whole body lay on Li Jinrui's body. Only then did he realize that Li Jinrui had fainted. And Li Mosin, who broke in, when he saw the scene on the bed, his pupils shrank sharply. His reason collapsed in an instant. Li Mosin's face was pale, and his eyes were red in disbelief. He rushed forward. "Ursu!" Li Mosin's mind was blank for a moment, but before he could rush forward he was pulled down. "What are you doing? Where did this little boy come from? Don't you see that I am working? Don't worry, when we are done playing, we will give her to you. Oh, it's a mixed race. Haha. I haven't played with a mixed-race boy yet. Ah. Lee Mosen's eyes were bloodshot. He threw a punch at the man. That person was stunned. Then he spat out a mouthful of blood and cursed. Mother ***. Damn it, see if I don't cripple you. Get lost. Lee Mosen yelled. Get lost. Scarface felt that he was really unlucky today. Originally, receiving some money to do a cushy job was a happy thing. Who knew that he would encounter a little girl who didn't care about her life? Now, before he could complete his task, he was interrupted by a rascal. Scarface was naked. He gritted his teeth and punched Lee Mosen's body. King brat. He yelled. Lee Mosen was punched so hard that he fell to the ground. His fists were very big and powerful. Lee Mosen was beaten up until he was dizzy. He was punched and kicked again and again. But he didn't seem to feel any pain. He looked towards the bed. His Ursu was lying on the bed. There were many wounds on her body, and her face was covered in tears. Lee Mosen's heart ached. Wretch! Lee Mosen spat out a mouthful of blood. He was already in a daze. Chapter 2304. Uncle Young was followed by a group of security guards. They swarmed in, and the expressions of the people inside changed drastically. Uncle Young came to see Lee Mosen, and found that Lee Mosen had been beaten to the point of being covered in blood. The blood on his face was shocking. After Lee Mosen regained his freedom, he struggled to get up and crawled toward Lee Jianyue. Uncle Yang realized that Lee Ursu was there too. Seeing Lee Ursu's state, Uncle Yang's heart skipped a beat. Uncle Yang was old, and he couldn't bear it when he saw such a scene. Tears flowed down, and Uncle Yang was on the verge of collapse. He punched the only naked man at the scene. After Lee Mosen crawled to Lee Jianyue's side with difficulty, he found that her body was covered with handprints and wounds. In addition, there was blood, which was particularly eye-catching on her snow-white body. The tears that didn't fall when she was besieged by the four big men burst at this moment. Lee Mosen couldn't help but pick her up and hug her tightly in his arms. He broke down and cried. His Ursu, his innocent and lovely Ursu. Why would she experience such a thing in such a place? How is it possible? He must be dreaming. He didn't believe it. But the warmth in his arms was so real. Lee Jianyue was awakened by the crying. But this voice was so familiar. It seemed to be, Brother Mosen? But how is it possible? Her brother Mosen had been very strong since he was a child. No matter what, he would not cry. She had only seen Lee Mosen cry once, and that was when her great-grandfather died. He hid alone in the corner of the morning hall, where his great-grandfather's coffin was placed, and secretly wiped his tears. But this voice was so real that Lee Jianyue couldn't ignore it. She opened her eyes and shouted in a daze, Brother Mosen. Her soft voice was a little doubtful. Lee Mosen's body stiffened, and then he looked down at her and whispered, I'm here, I'm here. He hugged her tightly, and pulled the quilt from the side to cover her. His voice was choked. Don't be afraid, I'm here. After Lee Jianyue opened her eyes wide, she saw Lee Mosen's body covered in blood, and then she realized that she was naked. She seemed to suddenly remember something, and subconsciously wanted to look to the side. However, Lee Mosen blocked her face, and then covered her eyes. Those people had been dragged away and restrained, but the mess in the room was still a bit scary. Lee Jianyue felt the sharp pain in her body, and her tears fell. Brother Mosen, was I? Lee Mosen lowered his head and gently pressed his lips against hers. He said, I'm sorry, Ursu. I'm the one who let you down. I was impulsive. Close your eyes. When Mom and Dad arrive later, I'll apologize to them. Lee Jianyue's voice was full of doubt. What? Lee Mosen stood in front of her with some difficulty and said in a choked voice, I couldn't help it. I did something I shouldn't have done to you. Ursu, sleep for a while. Mom and Dad will come later. Lee Jianyue's heart trembled. It's you. No, it's not. Yes, it's me. I was foolish. Lee Mosen whimpered in a low voice. He covered the two of them with the quilt. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Uncle Yang widened his eyes in disbelief. Ursu was obviously in a daze. Could it be that this child wanted to take responsibility by herself? How could this be? Lee Mosen was a very smart child. How could he say such nonsense in front of Lee Jianyue at such a time? Chapter 2305. Li Mosin was a very smart child. How could he say such nonsense in front of Li Jianyue at such a time? Then his life would be over. Li Jianyue was skeptical, but the pain in her body was real. She felt a little uncomfortable, and tears kept falling. She knew that something terrible had happened to her. However, no matter how hard she racked her brain, she couldn't remember what it was. It had just happened. But in her mind, it seemed like it had happened a long time ago. Li Jianyue only felt that she felt very safe being held in Li Mosin's arms. Unknowingly, Li Jianyue closed her eyes and fell asleep in a daze. After some time, there was a sudden noise outside. Li Jianyue heard someone shouting, "Don't move, police!" But soon, she heard Grandpa Yang's voice again. "Sir, madam, you're finally here." Hearing this, Li Jianyue finally opened her eyes. Then Li Mosin let go of his hand. Li Jianyue saw with her own eyes that Li Mosin limped out of bed. Then, he knelt in front of Li Xiqing and Su Qianxi. Li Xiqing's face was livid, and Su Qianxi's eyes were already red. She went up to Li Jianyue and said in a choked voice, "Ursu." Li Mosin knelt on the ground and kowtowed to Li Xiqing 3 times. "Dad, I'm sorry." Li Xiqing couldn't take it anymore. He went forward and kicked Li Mosin in the chest. Li Mosin was flipped over and groaned. Then he got up and knelt properly again. Uncle Yang cried out, "Sir." Li Jianyue's face was also pale. She shouted, "Dad." Li Xiqing's face was almost twisted. Then he picked Li Mosin up. Su Qianxi was so scared that she cried. She went forward and snatched Li Mosin back. She said, "Don't do this. Let go. Hubby." Li Xiqing threw him to the ground angrily and said, "Go to the hospital." When they arrived at the hospital, Li Jianyue fell asleep again. Under Su Qianxi and Li Xiqing's worried questioning, the doctor said, "Although the injury on your daughter's body looks serious, it's not a big deal." Su Qianxi's face was pale. "Then she is still a minor. Has she been?" The doctor had expected them to ask this question. He heaved a sigh of relief and said, "The testicles are intact. What you were worried about did not happen." Hearing that, Su Qianxi burst into tears again, but she was happy. "Great, I knew it would be okay." Li Xiqing was also dazed and then his face darkened. No one knew what he was thinking. The doctor continued, "However, after experiencing something like this, you have to pay attention to the child's psychological counseling." Su Qianxi quickly agreed and then asked, "Where is Mosin?" The doctor's expression was a little solemn. "I just asked the people in the emergency room. His condition is not optimistic. Due to the beating, his stomach is slightly bleeding, and one of his ribs is broken. There are some small cracks in his hand, and he has a slight concussion. The situation is a little serious, and it is recommended that he be hospitalized for observation." Li Mosin was still in the middle of the examination. Throughout the entire process of the examination, tears continuously flowed from the corners of his eyes. The nurse's heart ached as she said, "Little brother, don't be sad. Your sister is fine." However, Li Mosin did not say a word. Finally, the examination was completed. Li Mosin lay in the ward and hung up the water. After a while, he heard the steady sound of leather shoes. Chapter 2306. Li Mosin knew that it was Li Xiqing. He didn't want to open his eyes, but his tears silently flowed down. In the end, it was because he had gone too late. If he had arrived earlier, if he had discovered the clues earlier, Ursu wouldn't have been tainted by such a person. If he had arrived earlier, it would have been better. Li Xiqing looked at the adopted son on the bed. After a long silence he said, "Mosin." Li Mosin didn't respond, but his hands were gradually clenched. Li Xiqing saw it clearly and sighed softly. "I'm sorry." Li Mosin's eyelids trembled, and he finally opened his eyes. "Ursa's test results are out," Li Xiqing said. "Her body is intact. She's fine. She wasn't violated." Li Mosin's eyes widened when he heard this. But then he cried tears of joy and said in a choked voice, "That's great." Li Xiqing sighed softly. "I'm sorry." Li Mosin tried to get up, but Li Xiqing held him down. "She's still sleeping." The tears at the corner of Li Mosin's eyes were obvious. He said, "I want to see her. Your injury is very serious. You should rest well." Li Siqing said. Then, to Li Mosen's surprise, Li Siqing sat down on the chair next to him. Li Mosen felt a little uneasy. Li Siqing asked, "Why did you kowtow to me in Star City just now?" He thought that he had brought Ursu to that kind of place, and then done something worse than an animal. At that time, he had completely lost his ability to judge. He admitted that he had always had a trace of distrust for this child, because of his mother. However, after he calmed down a little, he discovered the truth of the matter. Now that he knew that his daughter was fine, Li Siqing changed his opinion of this child. Li Mosen faced Li Siqing's question and said, "Because I thought Ursu was." When he went in, the scar-faced man happened to be lying on Li Jianyue's body. At that time, he thought. Li Mosen thought of the despair at that time, and felt very scared. "Ursu is fine. It's really great. If something happened to her, what were you going to do?" Li Siqing asked. "But nothing happened to her. Then, what were you planning to do at that time?" Li Siqing asked again. "Kowtow to me. And then say that you were confused. You know, if Ursu was really violated at that time, do you know what it means to say these words?" Li Mosen opened his mouth and whispered, "I know." That meant that Li Mosen would have to take the blame. Li Jianyue and the entire Li family would hate him for the rest of their lives. But so what? Li Mosen's gaze softened. If something really happens to Ursu, it's better to let her think that the person who violated her is me. It's better than letting her know that the person who took away her virginity and ruined her innocence is actually a terrible guy she doesn't know. At least, I'm someone she can hate. If she can't hate me, then she can only hate herself. Dad, that would be very painful. Li Siqing's heart was touched. He found it hard to believe that a 19-year-old child could actually say such words. Li Siqing looked at him deeply and said, "I know that you have never really seen Ursu as your sister." Chapter 2307. Li Mosen's heart skipped a beat, and he looked at him in a panic. "Dad, Li Siqing continued. "What are you afraid of?" Li Mosen was silent, feeling very nervous. "I'll give you a chance, Mosen." Li Siqing looked at him and said word by word, "I'll give you 5 years. Within 5 years, if you can make Ursa not see you as a brother, but as a boy she likes, then I'll agree to you pursuing her." Li Mosen's eyes widened in disbelief. He even wondered if he was hallucinating. Li Siqing continued, "But the premise is that you have to make Ursu like you too. Or if you regret it in the future and don't like Ursu anymore." "No." Li Mosen blurted out and said quickly, "I love her, Dad." Li Siqing was shocked by the word love. After a moment he shook his head and said, "You're still too young. Don't be so sure." "No, really, Dad, I've thought about it for a long time. I want to stay by her side for the rest of my life. I feel that other girls can't compare to a finger of hers. Even," Li Mosen paused and said, "even when I thought something happened to her, I thought about marrying her. If she was willing to marry me, I wanted to marry her. I wanted to be with her for the rest of my life." Li Siqing heard this and sighed softly. "You're just restless during puberty." Li Mosen was anxious and was about to say something, but he was interrupted by Li Siqing. "Don't rush to deny it. You can't prove this kind of thing. Only through time can you slowly prove it." With that, Li Siqing continued, "In addition, I still hope that you go abroad to further your studies. You're a good seedling. If you stay by Ursa's side for the rest of your life, you won't go far. A man should hold up a woman's sky. You have to take this step." Li Mosen looked at Li Siqing and finally nodded. He knew that Li Siqing would not harm him. Seeing him nod, Li Siqing quickly stood up and said, "Then I'll go first. Have a good rest." At this time on the other side of Kingstown, at the Tan family, Tan Jiala had just been promoted to minister, and there was an endless stream of guests at home. Even the children of the Qin family also basked in the limelight and walked with the wind. Tan Jiala had just finished entertaining a subordinate and was smiling as he returned to his room. When he saw the table full of gifts, he patted his beer belly in relief. Suddenly, the phone in the study room rang. Tan Jiala happily picked up the phone and leaned back in his chair, putting on airs. "Hello, who is this?" "I'm Tan Jiala." "You're Tan Jiala, right?" The person on the other end seemed to be checking something. Then he said, "Congratulations, you're fired." Tangela's face instantly darkened. "What the hell are you?" "I'm from the mayor's bureau. My name is Wang Zhen." Tangela's expression immediately changed. He smiled and said, "So it's Mayor Wang. Since you know, then come and do the paperwork tomorrow." Only then did Tangela realize that he was not joking. His expression immediately changed as he said, "How can this be, Mayor Wang? What did I do wrong?" "You didn't do anything wrong. You can only blame yourself for having such a capable daughter." Before Tangela could react, the call was hung up. Chapter 2308. After Quan Jingyi separated from Li Jianyue, he was very depressed. But no matter how depressed he was, he still had to do his work. This month's part-time salary had increased, and Quan Jingyi was still very motivated to do it. The weekend passed quickly, and Quan Jingyi found that Li Jianyue didn't come to class on Monday. Quan Jingyi looked at her empty seat, and his heart was also empty. She didn't come. Could it be that he had scared her that day? Quan Jingyi felt a little uncomfortable, and at the same time, he felt a little guilty. He was too impulsive. He hadn't known Li Jianyue for a long time. If he had known, he would have waited first. She must have thought that he was a very frivolous person. Quan Jingyi was a little regretful, but he didn't give up. After class, he sent her a message. However, as soon as he picked up his phone, he found that Qin Shizhao had sent him a lot of messages. In addition to WeChat, there were also phone calls and text messages. Quan Jingyi was a little scared. He walked out of the classroom and called her back. The other side quickly picked up. Qin Shizhao sounded like she was crying. "Quan Jingyi, where are you?" Quan Jingyi rarely heard Qin Shizhao speak in such a tone. He frowned and said, "I'm at school." "What's wrong?" "Woo woo woo." Qin Shizhao seemed to want to say something, but she couldn't help but want to cry. Her voice sounded extremely aggrieved. Quan Jingyi felt that something was wrong. "Where are you? I'll go find you." Qin Shizhao choked and quickly told him the address. Quan Jingyi grabbed his school bag. Just as class was about to start, the teacher walked in and saw Quan Jingyi like this. He immediately shouted, "Quan Jingyi, where are you going?" Quan Jingyi didn't even turn his head. "I have something to do." After saying that, he disappeared. The teacher was so angry that he glared at him. "How dare you?" However, he had already gone far away. When Quan Jingyi saw Qin Shizhao, she looked terrible. Her originally beautiful clothes were covered with marks all over her body. It looked like she had been beaten with a stick. In addition, her skin was also swollen, especially her originally beautiful face, which was now red and swollen. Quan Jingyi was shocked. "What's the matter with you? Who hit you?" Qin Shizhao had already cried until she had no strength left. She sobbed and said, "It's my father." Quan Jingyi was even more shocked. "How is that possible? You're his only daughter, and you're the one he dotes on the most. How could he beat you up like this?" This move was too ruthless. Each and every one of them was a ghastly sight. Qin Shizhao cried even more fiercely. He was fired. He said it was my fault. Wow. Quan Jingyi didn't believe it. How is that possible? Didn't he just get promoted to minister? But today he was fired. He said that he had offended someone and that it was my fault. What did you do? It's that serious? Qin Shizhao cried intermittently. "I just wanted to find someone to scare her. Since she doesn't like you, I'll find someone to catch her and bring her to the hotel." Quan Jingyi's expression changed drastically. "What do you mean? Who are you talking about? Is it Li Jianyue?" Qin Shizhao nodded while sobbing. "I didn't want to do anything. I just found a few people from the society to scare her. Who knew that stupid Li Mosin would run over and fight with them? He was seriously injured and hospitalized." Quan Jingyi's face suddenly darkened, and he shouted, "What right do you have to do that?" Chapter 2309. Qin Shizhao shivered from the roar. She looked at him in disbelief and mumbled, "I'm doing it for your own good." Quan Jingyi's expression was extremely ugly. Li Jianyue is such an innocent girl. In her world, black is black, white is white. If she likes me, then she likes me. If she doesn't like me, then she doesn't like me. No matter how much she doesn't like me, it's my own business. What right do you have to tell me what to do? Qin Shizao's heart turned cold. I'm doing this so that you can. What do you want me to do? Quan Jingyi gritted his teeth. Whether it's for me or for yourself, you know very well in your heart. Isn't it because of Li Mosen? You like Li Mosen? Do you really think I don't know? Qin Shizao took a step back and her face turned pale. Li Mosen doesn't just have a sibling relationship with Li Jianyue, so you're jealous of Li Jianyue. So you called a few gangsters to take her to the hotel? Qin Shizao's face turned even paler. The little thought in her heart was completely exposed at this moment. Quan Jingyi gritted his teeth. From what I know about you, you dragged her to the hotel. I'm afraid it wasn't just to scare her, right? Qin Shizao couldn't hold on any longer and fell to the ground. Seeing her reaction, Quan Jingyi suddenly felt a dull pain in his heart. He looked at Qin Shizao on the ground in disbelief. What was even more unimaginable was that Li Jianyue was such an innocent girl. After experiencing such a thing, how big the shadow in her heart would be. Quan Jingyi suddenly clenched his fists, gritted his teeth, and looked at Qin Shizao on the ground. He said word by word, "You deserve it." With that, he turned around and walked away without looking back. Qin Shizao sat on the ground in a daze. After seeing his back disappear from her sight, she suddenly burst into tears. Quan Jingyi ran all the way to the road. As he ran, he sent a WeChat message to Li Jianyue. However, there was no response from Li Jianyue. Sending a WeChat message was also like a stone sinking into the sea. He took a taxi to Yushio and paid the fare for his part-time job for a few days. However, Quan Jingyi didn't have time to feel sorry for her. After finding Li Jianyue's house, he quickly pressed the doorbell. The person who opened the door was their family's servant. Quan Jingyi had met her before. He greeted her politely. "Hello, may I ask if Li Jianyue is at home?" She said worriedly. "I don't know either. Sigh. I don't know what happened to the child last night. She and her brother didn't come home," Nanny Rong said, her voice choking. "I'm afraid something happened to her. Sir and Madam won't tell me. They just told me not to worry. How can I not worry?" Quan Jingyi had a bad feeling about this. "Excuse me, can you tell me which hospital it is?" In the car, Quan Jingyi kept praying in his heart. "Don't get into trouble, don't get into trouble, please don't get into trouble." When they arrived at the hospital, Quan Jingyi asked the nurse at the front desk. However, this was a private hospital, and Li Jianyue's condition was special. The nurse refused to say anything. Quan Jingyi had no choice but to ask, "Can you tell me which ward Li Mosen is in?" The nurse hesitated for a moment, but she still asked her colleague to use the pager to ask. When Li Mosen heard Quan Jingyi's name, his heartbeat sped up. He gritted his teeth and said, "Yes, of course." Chapter 23:10. When Quan Jingyi saw Li Mosen didn't seem to be in a good state. He was lying on the bed, his body tied with a fixed board, and his hands were also wrapped in a thick layer. Seeing him, Quan Jingyi's heart had already turned cold. It was over. Li Mosen was like this. Then Li Jianyue. Quan Jingyi didn't dare to think about it. He looked at him, and actually didn't dare to step in. Li Mosen looked at him coldly. "You still have the face to come." Quan Jingyi's face was already a little pale. Facing Li Mosen's unfriendly gaze, he didn't dare to speak. After all, it was Qin Shizao who did it, and Qin Shizao was introduced to Li Jianyue by him. At the end of the day, it was his responsibility. Li Mosen had become like this, and he couldn't get away with it. Quan Jingyi took 2 steps forward and looked at Li Mosen. After a while he dared to ask, "Li Jianyue, you still have the face to ask." Li Mosen's face was gloomy, and his blue eyes were like a giant beast that had awakened from an ancient sleep. Quan Jingyi felt even more flustered. "How is she? Is she okay?" "Thanks to you, she's still in the hospital." Quan Jingyi's expression changed slightly. "Then now if you're here to see her, forget it. You can go back." Li Mosen was very cold. "She has our family to take care of her. If you're here to apologize, forget it. Her mood is unstable now. If she sees you and her mood gets worse, it won't be good." Quan Jingyi opened his mouth, but he was speechless. In the end, it was still his fault. Even though he was the last one to know about this matter, He was the one who was the most wrong. Can you tell me which ward she is in? But before he could finish, Lee Mosin said, No. I just want to see her. No need. Lee Mosin was resolute and his attitude was very tough. Even though he was still lying in the hospital bed, Kwon Jingyi was a little disappointed. At the same time, he felt very uncomfortable. I'm sorry. Lee Mosin watched Kwon Jingyi leave. The anger and discomfort in his heart still didn't ease at all. Kwon Jingyi turned around. Just as he walked out of Lee Mosin's ward, he saw a slender figure. Lee Jianyue was wearing a loose hospital gown, and beside her stood a tall young man. When Kwon Jingyi saw her, he was stunned and overjoyed. Lee Jianyue. Lee Jianxian stood in front of Kwon Jingyi and asked, You are? He's my classmate, Lee Jianyue said. His name is Kwon Jingyi. Lee Jianxian's expression immediately darkened. You are Kwon Jingyi? Kwon Jingyi clearly sensed Lee Jianxian's hostility. He smiled bitterly and nodded. Lee Jianxian gritted his teeth, clenched his fists, and wanted to go forward. Lee Jianyue quickly pulled him back and said, Brother. Lee Jianxian paused and turned around. He saw Lee Jianyue's slightly pleading face. It has nothing to do with him. How could it have nothing to do with him? Lee Jianxian growled. If he hadn't called you out, you wouldn't have encountered such a thing. It's not him. Lee Jianyue looked at Kwon Jingyi and said word by word. It's his cousin. Same. Lee Jianxian shook off her hand. Lee Jianyue hugged his hand tightly again and looked at Kwon Jingyi. She asked, What are you doing here? Kwon Jingyi opened his mouth and finally said in a small voice, I'm sorry. Lee Jianyue pursed her lips. So, do you know about this? Chapter 23:11. Kwon Jingyi immediately said, I don't know. I just found out. Lee Jianrui didn't believe it. When Kwon Jingyi saw this, he immediately said, It's true. She just called me. She was beaten up by her father because of this incident. After knowing about this, I took a taxi to your house. And then do you know that she used your name to ask me out? Lee Jianrui's words made Kwon Jingyi stunned again. Then, his expression turned ugly at a speed visible to the naked eye. Lee Jianrui saw his reaction and knew. He didn't seem to know. She said that you were drunk and hoped that I could go with her to send you back, Lee Jianrui said slowly. But when I got there, I didn't see you or her. Then a waiter tricked me upstairs. There were 4 men waiting for me inside. Lee Jianxian's teeth were grinding. He looked at Kwon Jingyi in front of him and wanted to throw him out directly. If Brother Mosin hadn't come so quickly. When Lee Jianyue said this, her eyes were already red. I've always believed in you guys. I treated you guys as good friends. It turns out that I was the only one who thought too highly of myself. His voice gradually choked, and Kwon Jingyi's heart seemed to be tightly twisted. Go, Lee Jianrui said. In the future I won't treat you as a friend. Kwon Jingyi felt as if he had been slapped into the mud. In an instant, the sky was covered, and the surroundings were dark. After Lee Jianrui finished speaking, she had already taken Lee Jianxian's hand and walked towards Lee Mosin's ward. As for Kwon Jingyi, his eyes gradually turned red. He stood there listening to the sound of the door opening and closing behind him, as if he had lost his soul. In the future, I won't treat you as a friend. Kwon Jingyi turned his head and could only see the closed door of the ward. He walked towards the ward. Before he got close, he heard Lee Jianrui's low sobs coming from inside. Then it was Lee Mosin's voice. Be good, I'm fine. Lee Jianrui cried even louder. Then, it seemed that they said something else, but Kwon Jingyi's ears could only hear a buzzing sound. After standing for a long time, Kwon Jingyi turned around and left the hospital. After that, Kwon Jingyi never saw Lee Jianyue again. I heard that she transferred to another school. Not long after the incident, Lee Mosin applied for a suspension from school. Somehow, this matter was discovered by Qin Shizao's school. Qin Shizao, who was 16 years old, was expelled from school. Because her father was fired, the house assigned by her unit was also taken back. Later, Father Qin tried to do business, but it seemed that everyone was deliberately making things difficult for him. He couldn't do many businesses, and his life was getting worse day by day. Kwon Jingyi knew that it was all because of Qin Shizao's mistake. However, There was no medicine for regret in life. If they were wrong, they had to admit it. If they were beaten, they had to stand at attention. If he was wrong, he was wrong. Lee Mosin's body was recovering very well. During this period of time, Lee Jianyue had been by his side busying herself. When it was finally time to be discharged, Lee Jianyue was especially happy. She helped him pack his things and said, "We can finally go home. It's so uncomfortable staying in the hospital." Su Qianxi couldn't help but laugh. "I told you to go back a long time ago, but you insisted on staying here to accompany your brother Mosin. Now you're feeling really bad." Lee Jianyue stuck out her tongue. "I was just afraid that brother Mosin would be bored." Chapter 23:12. Lee Mosin was removing the gauze. When he heard this, he chuckled. "I'm not bored." Lee Jianyue snorted angrily. "You're so annoying." Su Qianxi laughed, and then drove Lee Jianyue away. "All right, don't mess around here. Go think about what to eat for lunch, and let Nanny Rong make it." "Okay." Lee Jianyue answered cheerfully and gladly took over this heavy responsibility. The dishes that Lee Jianyue ordered that day were all surprisingly strong and healthy. When she returned home, she forced a lot of food on Lee Mosin. Lee Jianyue sat on the sofa and watched TV after eating and drinking. Nanny Rong was cleaning the house. Su Qianxi went to work, and Li Jianxian and Yu Chulin went to class. In the huge villa, only the sound of the TV echoed. Li Jianyue suddenly felt a tremble in her heart and a little cold. She pulled the blanket next to her and leaned against the back of the sofa. Her eyes looked at the TV, but they were not focused. After a long time, Li Jianyue leaned against the sofa and closed her eyes. She had a dream. In the dream, she returned to that terrible hotel room. People, a lot of people. They were all men. They looked old and ugly. When they smiled, they showed their black and dirty teeth. Their turbid eyes stared at her lecherously, as if they wanted to bite her from head to toe. And in front of her, there was a terrible face with a long scar. He smiled ferociously and couldn't wait to tear off his belt and pounce on her. Li Jianyue was so scared that she screamed and flinched. But no matter what, she couldn't escape. "No, I beg you, no help? Ursu, wake up!" Lee Mosin's voice sounded in her ear, and Li Jianyue suddenly opened her eyes. Her vision was a little blurry, but soon, she saw Lee Mosin's deep and exquisite face. His blue eyes were full of concern. Seeing that she was awake, he was obviously relieved. Lee Mosin whispered, It's okay. Li Jianyue was a little stunned. Suddenly, she opened her mouth and burst into tears. She hugged Mosin's waist. Being hugged by her, Lee Mosin felt as if his heart had been hit, and the pain was unbearable. He hugged her tightly and gently patted her back. It's okay. Li Jianyue buried her head in her hands and cried bitterly. Nanny Rong watched from the side with a worried look on her face. She gestured to Lee Mosin behind Ursu to take her back to her room. Lee Mosin understood, and coaxed her to stand up. He then sent her to her room. Li Jianyue's room was a classic princess room. Cute velvet dolls were placed one after another in a pink Northern European style. Together with the pile of dolls, they looked very girlish. Lee Mosin let her sit on the bed, and bent down to take off her shoes. Be good, he said. We're already home. Those people have already paid the price. All of them have been sent by Dad to Africa to do hard labor. We'll never see them again. Li Jianyue didn't know where this sentence had struck a chord in Li Jianyue. The little girl suddenly laughed. Seeing her smile, Lee Mosin's mood also relaxed a lot. Grabbing her feet, he placed them on the bed and said, Sleep. Li Jianyue sniffled. Suddenly, she hugged Lee Mosin again. Brother Mosin. Lee Mosin raised his hand and touched her head. He asked calmly, What's wrong? Are you going abroad? Lee Mosin stopped stroking her head. After a moment of silence, he replied, Yes. Baidu wanted to read the latest chapter of the 99th Divorce Claw Bookhouse for free. Chapter 23:13. Although Li Jianyue was prepared, her tears still fell. She choked and said, Will you miss me? Lee Mosin didn't even think about it and said, Yes. After a pause he added, Every day. Li Jianyue hugged his waist and sobbed. She seemed to want to say something, but in the end, she swallowed it back. Lee Mosin's departure time was set for half a month later. His body had completely recovered. The procedures for going abroad and entering school had been completed a long time ago. No matter how reluctant Lee Mosin was, there would always be a time to say goodbye. Li Xiqing and Su Qianxi sent him to the airport. After accompanying him to get the boarding pass, Su Qianxi's tears suddenly rolled down. In order not to let the child see, Su Qianxi deliberately turned her back. Li Xiqing gently hugged his wife and looked at Li Mosin deeply. He said, "Take care of yourself when you are outside. You are an adult. In the future you have to learn to take care of yourself." Li Mosin looked at Su Qianxi's crying appearance and suddenly wanted to retreat. The reluctance and sadness in his heart were stirring at this moment. In the face of Li Xiqing's advice, Li Mosin nodded heavily. Su Qianxi wiped her tears and broke free from Li Xiqing's hand. She went forward to hug her grown son and said, "It's cold outside. Remember to keep warm. When you go back to the apartment at night, remember to make yourself a cup of ginger tea to warm up. Okay. Remember to build a good relationship with your classmates. Outside is not like at home. Many people are unreasonable. Bear with it when you should. If you can't bear it anymore, remember to fight back. Okay. Your English is not bad, but it is not our own country. You have to learn more humbly and integrate into their society. But remember, you will always be a Chinese, understand?" Okay. Su Qianxi thought for a moment. It seemed that she had said almost everything she needed to say on the way here. She touched her son's face reluctantly, hugged him and said, "Remember to call home. Mom loves you." Li Mosin's emotions, which had been suppressed for a long time, finally came out at this moment. His eyes turned red in an instant. He hugged Su Qianxi back. Li Xiqing also came forward and hugged his wife and Li Mosin together. He said, "Study well, I'll wait for you to come back." "All right," Li Mosin replied. Dragging the suitcase, Li Mosin looked back one last time. Suddenly, his gaze landed on something far behind Li Xiqing. Li Jianxian and Yu Chulin led Li Jianyue and stood far behind them. Li Jianyue seemed to be crying. When she saw him turn around, she waved at him and shouted, "Remember to come back." Her voice was loud, and many people turned to look at her. The crisp roar made Li Mosin tighten his grip on the lever. In a flash, he turned around and entered the security checkpoint as if he was fleeing. Li Xiqing had said that she could not back down from anything. He would have to take this step sooner or later. Humans always needed to grow. There can be no construction without destruction. After passing the security check, Li Mosin had to go through a long process before boarding the plane. After boarding the plane, he took out his phone. Just as he was about to turn it off, he suddenly received a WeChat message from Li Jianyue. She said, "I will wait for you to come back." The corners of Li Mosin's lips curled up slightly, but the tears had already fallen. He quickly wiped his face, turned off his phone, and officially embarked on the journey home. Read the latest chapter of 99th Divorce Claw Bookhouse for free. Chapter 23:14. When she arrived at the apartment arranged by Li Xiqing, it was night time in the United States. The weather was a little cold. Li Mosin wrapped himself tightly in his down jacket. When he entered the house, he found that all the daily necessities were ready. The house was not big, about 30 square meters, and it was very close to the school. There was a small kitchen, a bathroom and a 1.5-meter bed. Next to the bed was a desk, and when she looked up, she could see a huge bookshelf. There wasn't much space left. After putting down the suitcase, all that was left was an open space. This was the place where he would live for the next 5 years. Time passed in a flash. Li Jianyue was like many college students. When she was in her 3rd year of high school, she would study from morning to night. Each of her brothers was smarter than the other, but their IQ was not distributed to her at all. Li Jianyue could only hold on tightly in her last year of high school, hoping to be admitted to Kingstown University. Kingstown University was one of the top 15 universities in the country. Although the major that Li Jianyue wanted to apply for was relatively unpopular, the cutoff point was still very high. On the day of the results, Li Jianhua screamed and rolled up from the sofa. Her voice almost penetrated the ceiling. Ah, Mom. I passed. Daddy, 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 daddy. Ah. This scream startled the entire family. Li Jianxian had just finished showering and came downstairs when he was greeted by a pounce. Li Jianhua hugged him and shouted, "It's over, it's over, it's over." Li Jianxian was so noisy that his eardrums were about to burst. He pulled her down and said, "You're so heavy. Be quiet." Li Jianhua didn't mind being thrown out. Her smile was still cheerful. "It's over, it's over. It's exactly half a point more." Hearing this, Li Jianxian laughed out loud. "You're really something. You got into Kingstown University's major with the lowest score requirement. And you only scored 0.5 points. Li Jianhua was so angry that she put her hands on her hips. "Anyway, I passed." Sure. Li Xiqing and Su Qianxi were overjoyed and discussed having a celebration party for her the next day. Li Jianhua jumped up the stairs proudly. When she returned to her room, she took out her phone and video called Li Mosin. It should be 7 o'clock in the morning in the United States. Li Mosin picked up the phone after a while. The screen was a little shaky. Li Jianhua screamed excitedly, "Brother Mosin!" Cough, cough, cough. Violent coughing sounds came from the other side. Then the image was adjusted to face his face. Li Mosin was brushing his teeth, and his mouth was full of foam. He looked at her in shock and asked, "What happened?" Li Jianhua couldn't help but laugh out loud. She happily hugged her phone and rolled on the bed. "I got in." Li Mosin heaved a sigh of relief and laughed out loud. Li Jianhua saw him pick up the cup next to him to rinse his mouth, and then continue to brush his teeth. When Li Jianhua saw this, she was unhappy and said angrily, "Why are you reacting like this?" Li Mosin brushed his teeth and said vaguely, "It's expected." Li Jianhua was even more unhappy. How did this become something to be expected? She was actually panicking inside. Li Jianhua angrily hung up the phone. When Li Mosin saw this, he quickly called back. However, Li Jianhua didn't pick it up no matter what. She even sent him a humph emoji. Li Mosin smiled. He thought that she wouldn't be angry after a while, so he hurriedly packed up, put on his backpack, and stepped out of the door. Chapter 23:15. Who knew that Li Jianhua's anger lasted a little longer this time? She didn't talk to him for 3 days in a row. Li Mosin had recently developed a new project with his classmates. He was so busy that he hadn't even eaten yet. He resigned himself to his fate and cooked 2 packets for himself. While cooking, Li Mosin called Li Jianhua. The call was quickly connected. Li Mosin didn't know if it was an illusion, but he vaguely heard a very silly ringtone in front of his house. It sounded like Li Jianhua's style. Then the doorbell rang. Li Mosin had just put down the noodles and heard the doorbell. He asked in English, "Who is it?" He turned around and walked to the door. The person on the other end of the phone suddenly answered the phone. The voice on the other end of the phone sounded at the same time as the voice outside the door. "Open the door." Li Mosin was shocked. His actions were faster than his mind, and he turned the door handle. Li Jianhua held the phone in her hand and smiled brightly. "Hello," she said. A sweet voice sounded in front of him, but Li Mosin froze in place. Li Jianhua saw that he was stunned. She smiled and squeezed in. "It smells so good. Are you cooking instant noodles?" As she said that, she had already pushed Li Mosin away and dragged her small pink suitcase in. "Oh, I'm so hungry." Li Mosin closed the door and turned to look at Li Jianhua. He asked, How did I know you were here, right?" Li Jianhua smiled and put down the suitcase. Then, she rushed into the small kitchen. "I have the address." "Li Mosin, why did you come alone?" "Because brother and brother Chu are coming to the seminar, so I came with them." Li Jianhua touched her growling stomach. "So little. Do you have more?" Li Mosin was happy. Only then did he realize that deep in his heart, he couldn't suppress the smile on his lips. He walked to the refrigerator and took out 2 packets of instant noodles. He opened them and asked, "Do you want eggs?" "Yes. And ham." Li Jianhua rubbed her small hands. She almost drooled. "Wow, I haven't eaten instant noodles for a long time." Li Mosin glanced at her. "Go wash your hands." "Okay." Li Jianyue left quickly. When she came out of the bathroom after washing her hands, Li Mosen had already turned off the fire. He took out the small pot, and Li Jianyue volunteered to get the bowls and chopsticks. Then, she ate with a satisfied look on her face. Li Mosen looked at Li Jianyue and found that she looked more exquisite and beautiful than in the video. 3 years ago, most of the baby fat on her face had disappeared. Now Li Jianyue was 20 years old and pretty. Li Mosen's eyes were gentle, and he couldn't suppress the smile on his lips. Eat slowly. Ow! Li Jianyue's mouth was scalded, and she quickly fanned herself. Li Mosen quickly poured her a glass of warm water and placed it beside her hand. It had always been a habit. Even though they hadn't seen each other for 3 years, he didn't feel the slightest bit rusty. Li Mosen's heart was full. Looking at her cute little face as usual, he asked, "Where's Daesu?" Li Jianyue took it and drank it. She said, "They went to the hotel arranged by the conference. I said I'd come to look for you. Heh. Why didn't you tell me before you came?" Li Mosen was a little reproachful. "There's nothing to eat at home. Fortunately, I didn't tell you. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to eat instant noodles." Li Jianyue drank a mouthful of instant noodle soup in satisfaction. Do you usually eat instant noodles? Baidu read the latest chapter of 99th Divorce Claw Bookhouse for free. Chapter 23:16. Occasionally, it was rare for Li Jianyue to be so serious. She said, "Eating instant noodles is not good for your health. Mom said that if I catch you eating instant noodles, I will tell her." Li Mosen smiled. "Young lady, so you're not here to see me, but to supervise me?" "Yes," Li Jianyue said confidently. "Hurry up and eat. After eating I will sleep." I am so sleepy." "You are really?" Li Mosen wanted to say something, but he was at a loss for words. He laughed out loud. After Li Jianyue finished eating the noodles, she rummaged through her small suitcase and took out a pink nightgown. "I am going to take a shower." "Okay." Li Mosen ate the noodles. "There is a toothbrush and a disposable bath towel on the cabinet." "Okay." Li Jianyue wandered to the bathroom. When she turned on the hot water, she complained, "This hot water heats up too slowly." Li Mosen ate the noodles and said faintly, "Who asked you to come? The conditions for international students are so difficult." "Humph." Li Mosen chuckled and was in a good mood as he cleaned up the dishes. He also cleaned up the room. Li Jianyue's small suitcase was open, revealing a gift box inside. The gift box was light gray and looked carefully wrapped. There was a small note on it with a big smiley face and a few words, "For Brother Mosen." It was also sprayed with perfume. It was sweet. Li Mosen's eyes softened. He gently stroked the gift. Then he sat on the couch and pulled the ribbon. It was a tie clip. The tie clip looked a little simple. There were small diamonds inlaid on it. A brand logo was very obscure on it. A tie clip. Li Mosen usually wore a suit and a tie, but he had never tried a tie clip. This girl must have found out that he didn't have the habit of putting a tie clip on during the video call. So she bought such a thing. Li Mosen took out a tie and put it on. He tried it on. He couldn't suppress the corners of his mouth. Li Mosen's heart was filled with such a surprise. So good. Li Jianyue came out of the shower and saw that he had already opened the gift. She exclaimed in surprise, "Aya, why are you so fast? I wanted to give you a surprise." Li Mosen took off his tie clip and put it back solemnly. He gave her a sideways glance and chuckled. "I've already received the bigger surprise. This is nothing." Li Jianyue angrily put her hands on her hips again. "It's nothing. Give it back to me." As he spoke, he reached out to snatch it away. Li Mosen quickly raised his hand and said, "You want to take back what you've given away? I'll take it." Li Jianyue reached out to grab it again, but she was once again stopped by Li Mosen. However, she used too much force, and her whole body fell forward. Li Jianyue exclaimed and quickly hugged his head. Li Mosen closed his eyes and could only smell the faint fragrance coming from her chest. Li Jianyue suddenly felt an itch in her chest. She paused for a moment and then bounced away. Ah! Li Jianyue didn't know the severity of the situation. Her actions were a little fierce again. Li Mosen hurriedly supported her. He wrapped his arms around her waist and held her firmly in his arms. Li Jianyue opened her eyes wide and looked at him. The distance between the tips of their noses was less than 3 centimeters. Inexplicably, Li Jianyue's face burned. She pushed him away and said, "If you don't want to return it, then I won't. I'll give it to you." Humph. Li Mosen suddenly felt a little dry. He licked his lips and watched as she angrily jumped onto his bed. The corners of his mouth rose silently. Chapter 23:17. After putting away the tie clip, Li Mosen walked towards her and said, "You sleep here. Where should I sleep?" Humph. Li Jianyue covered her head with the blanket and ignored him. Li Mosen was helpless. After taking a shower, he returned to the table. He turned off the lights in the room and turned on the small table lamp to deal with work. Li Jianyue turned around and found that he was still writing and drawing. She thought that he was studying and said, "It's so late. Aren't you going to sleep? Wait for me to finish." "Okay." Li Jianyue moved inwards. "Sleep early. I'm going to sleep first." As she said that, she patted the spot next to her and closed her eyes. Li Mosen's heart skipped a beat. Then he felt a little helpless and muttered to himself, "Why aren't you on guard at all?" Sigh. Li Mosen lowered his head and continued to work. By the time he finished what he was doing, it was already 2 hours later. The little person on the bed was already sound asleep. At this moment, her legs were already raised, and she was breathing evenly with the blanket between her legs. Li Mosen stood up and tucked her in. Li Jianyue pouted and turned over, moaning. Li Mosen's movements were slightly stiff. Looking at her pink little mouth, his heart suddenly beat faster. The little person on the bed was still sleeping soundly. Li Mosen looked at her face, inch by inch, and approached her. He saw that he was getting closer and closer. Suddenly, the pair of fan-like eyelashes in front of him opened, revealing the dark and bright eyes inside. At this moment, the pair of eyes were hazy and sleepy. She looked at Li Mosen and blinked. Li Mosen's nerves all over his body tensed up. For a moment, he didn't know how to react. Li Jianyue looked at him. Suddenly, she reached out and hooked her arms around his neck. Li Jianyue asked, "Do you want to kiss me?" She sounded sleepy and a little confused. Li Mosen's heart skipped a beat and his body stiffened. Li Jianyue pouted and leaned forward to kiss him on the mouth. Her movements were very fast. Li Mosen's lips seemed to be electrified. Even his heart seemed to be installed with an engine, beating rapidly. Then, Li Jianyue let go of him and said, "Why aren't you sleeping yet?" Her tone was too natural, just like the kiss just now. It was as if it was the most natural thing for her. Li Mosen suddenly felt a little empty in his heart. He didn't feel very comfortable. When Li Jianyue saw him in a daze, she patted the seat beside her and said, "Come on up." Li Mosen's Adam's apple bobbed. Then he kicked off his slippers and climbed up. He turned off the light and lay down. Li Jianyue closed her eyes again. Li Mosen looked above his head for a long time and suddenly asked, "Do you often do this to Daesu?" "What?" Li Ersu asked in a muffled voice. "In the same bed." "Yeah." Li Jianyue yawned. "We're siblings." Li Mosen felt as if his heart had been choked. He felt a little uncomfortable. "Oh." After a minute of silence, Li Mosen asked again, "What about kissing?" Li Jianyue covered herself with the blanket and suddenly giggled. When Li Mosen heard her laughter, he felt a little upset. Unexpectedly, Li Jianyue, who was next to him, suddenly lay on his body. Her eyes were especially bright in the dark night. "Of course not. How could I kiss my brother?" Li Mosen's heart beat faster. In an instant, he began to let his imagination run wild. Li Jianyue shifted her body upwards and looked at him. She asked softly, "Can I kiss you?" Baidu wanted to read the latest chapter of the 99th Divorce Claw Bookhouse for free. Chapter 23:18. Li Mosen even held his breath. He looked at her and was silent for a moment. Li Jianyue leaned forward, puckered her lips and kissed his mouth. Li Mosen's whole body was stiff. He felt the soft touch on his lips, and his heart was in turmoil. In the end, he couldn't help but reach out and hug her. Li Jianyue exclaimed, and then her lips were blocked by Li Mosen. Lee Mosin kissed her deeply and heavily, but other than their lips touching, there was nothing else that went further. Lee Jianyue's face was burning. She blinked her eyes, and then, she tentatively stuck out her tongue to lick his lips. Like an electric shock, Lee Mosin's whole body stiffened again. The warm and fragrant body in his arms, starting from his lips, seemed to have a warm current quietly spread to his limbs and bones. An indescribable feeling spread throughout his body. Lee Jianyue saw that he didn't respond, and once again stuck out her tongue like in the novel. Lee Mosin's whole body was burning, but in the end, he still couldn't bear to push her away. He hugged her and kissed her again and again, until his mouth hurt. He couldn't bear to let go. In the end, Lee Jianyue was the first to retreat. She got down from him, and then shrank to the inside of the bed. The night was very late. Lee Jianyue felt that her heart was about to explode. Lee Mosin felt that his body was a little tense and uncomfortable. He didn't dare to approach, but he couldn't help but want to get closer and closer. Lee Jianyue gripped the quilt tightly and turned her back to him. She closed her eyes and tried to sleep. However, just as she brewed enough sleepiness, her waist suddenly tightened. He hugged her. Lee Jianyue could clearly hear her own heartbeat, as well as the pulse on his arm that was hugging her. In the whole world, there was only the sound of breathing and heartbeat. Lee Jianyue's whole body was stiff, and so was Lee Mosin. However, they were in a stalemate. No one moved first, and no one spoke first. After an unknown period of time, Lee Mosin heard the sound of breathing in his arms. Lee Mosin couldn't help but laugh. His heart was filled with satisfaction. He quietly hugged her tightly, kissed her on the top of her head and whispered, "Good night." Lee Jianyue slept in a daze. He didn't know what she was dreaming of, and she whimpered, "I love you too." Lee Mosin couldn't help but hug her tighter and close his eyes. Unsurprisingly, he suffered from insomnia. Because he had something urgent to deal with, he went out at dawn. By the time he returned, Lee Jianyue had already left. On the dining table, there were a few plates, covered with lids, with a note on them. "No matter how busy you are, remember to eat. I'm leaving." Lee Jianyue followed Lee Jianxian and Yuchulin around before returning to Kingstown. The summer vacation passed quickly. As a freshman, Lee Jianyue was tanned during the military training. It wasn't easy for her to make it to the end and crawl home. As soon as she entered the door, she heard a piece of good news. Both Li Xiqing and Su Qianxi were very happy. They told her that Lee Mosin had made more than 1 million in business with his classmates in the United States. During this process, Lee Mosin didn't ask for a single cent from his family. He even used his living expenses to invest without his parents' knowledge. Lee Jianyue's heart warmed when she heard that. She quickly went upstairs and video called Lee Mosin. In the next 2 years, Lee Mosin seemed to have turned on a cheat code. He registered a company abroad with his classmates, and it was doing very well. Baidu, read the latest chapter of 99th Divorce Claw Book House for free. Chapter 2319. The company's registered fund was also paid by Lee Mosin himself. But Lee Jianyue could see that he seemed to be very busy and tired. Every time she video called him, his face couldn't hide the tiredness and dark circles under his eyes. There were even a few times when he was video calling with her. He was so tired that he fell asleep. Lee Jianyue held her cheeks and listened to the sound of him sleeping. Her heart ached a little. It had been exactly 5 years since Lee Mosin went to the United States. 5 years ago, Lee Mosin set foot on this strange land alone. 5 years later, Lee Mosin had completed all the subjects and won countless praises from his tutors and classmates. In the end, when everyone thought that he would continue to develop in the United States, he chose to sell the company to a classmate who was working with him, leaving only a portion of the shares. When he came back, he didn't tell anyone. Lee Jianyue had recently been acting in a school play, and because she played the female lead of the play, she was named the campus belle of Kingstown University. Since she became famous, there was no lack of people looking at her when she walked on the road. It was common for boys to come and strike up a conversation, so everyone was used to it. Lee Jianyue held a few books and walked with her roommates on the road. In front of her, there were a few boys pushing each other. Finally, One of them, who looked a little shy, was pushed out. The little boy looked very shy. He scratched his head and said somewhat old-fashioned, "Hello, Li Jianyue. I'm Chen Yuan from the computer science department. I think you're very cute. I want to make friends with you." Li Jianyue's roommate next to her snickered. There are many people who want to make friends with Jianyue. Isn't it because they like her? Li Jianyue was already used to it. She smiled awkwardly and was about to speak. Suddenly, she caught a glimpse of something behind Chen Yuan. Li Jianyue was stunned for a moment, and then her eyes lit up. "Brother Mosen." Everyone turned to look at the source of the voice. At a glance, they saw a man who was obviously mixed race. He had black hair and blue eyes. He was tall enough to look down on the crowd. At a glance, they could tell that he was a very classy person. More importantly, he was very young and very handsome. Seeing such a character who looked like a weekly poster, everyone's eyes lit up. Li Mosen had long guessed that Li Jianyue would be very popular, but he didn't expect that his little girl would be blocked by so many people on the way home. Hearing that kid's words, he felt a little uncomfortable. Make friends? Heh. But this kind of discomfort immediately melted when Li Jianyue called him Brother Mosen. The corners of Li Mosen's mouth curled up, and he opened his arms to her. Li Jianyue, who was usually cold and aloof in front of her male classmates, laughed excitedly at this moment. She turned around and threw all the books to her roommates. Then, like a lark, she flew towards him. Li Mosen picked her up. Li Jianyue's laughter was crisp and clear. She hugged his neck tightly. The people behind him were all dumbfounded. This. Who would have thought that someone would appear out of nowhere? One of the boys behind Chen Yuan asked, "Classmate Li, who is this? He can't be your boyfriend, right?" Li Mosen put her down, and Li Jianyue smiled brightly. She stood on her tiptoes and raised her hand to hug his neck, but he was too tall, and Li Jianyue seemed to be hanging on him. However, Li Jianyue looked even more adorable in this way. Li Jianyue was a little pleased and proud. She said, "Yeah, my boyfriend." Li Mosen put his arm around her waist and lifted her up a little. He smiled politely and said, "Hello." The surrounding people looked at Li Mosen and then looked at Li Jianyue. Their eyes were filled with envy and jealousy, but with Li Jianyue's beauty, standing together with this mixed-race handsome guy, they were a real match made in heaven. Those who originally had some thoughts about Li Jianyue had completely given up at this moment. The opponent was too strong, and they didn't even have the desire to compete. Li Mosen looked down at Li Jianyue. "Do you have anything to do later?" "Nothing, we can go straight home." Li Jianyue's eyes curved. Then, as if she was showing off, she said, "I can drive now. Did you drive here?" When Li Mosen heard this, he lightly clicked his tongue. "I don't dare to let you drive. I'll drive. Let's go." "No, let me try to drive you." "Then let's talk at home." "No." "Oh, Brother Mosen." "Okay." Hee. End of full text. Please turn to the back Baidu to read the latest chapter of 99th Divorce Claw Bookhouse for free. Chapter 2320. Closing remarks for the 99th divorce. Please wait for a moment. After the content has been updated, please refresh the page to get the latest update. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.